I stood at the edge of the stone stage, surrounded by faces I'd seen 100 times before. Smiles too wide, voices too loud, all pretending this was a celebration instead of another leash tightened around someone's neck. The autumn wind brushed against my arms, tugging gently at the white silk draped over my shoulders. I kept my spine straight, hands folded in front of me the way he liked, chin lifted just enough to look proud, but not too proud. The Luna of the Silver Fang pack, graceful and untouchable. That's who I was supposed to be. Inside, I was something else entirely.
Beautiful as ever, my Luna,
Thorne whispered in my ear as he stepped beside me. His lips barely moved, but I felt the weight of his breath against my cheek like a warning.
Smile. They need to believe.
I didn't turn my head. They already do. He chuckled. It was quiet and cold, like water dripping from a cave ceiling, the kind of sound that made your skin remember pain. Thorne raised his hand toward the crowd, his posture stiff with command.
Today we honor the strength of our pack,
He said loudly. His voice boomed across the clearing, deep and sharp like a blade.
and we remind those who dare cross our borders that weakness will not be tolerated.
A wave of cheers rose, fists lifted, wolves growling in approval. It was always the same speech, recycled and twisted to match the fear he fed them. My smile was frozen in place. I had learned years ago that stillness was safer than emotion. That silence could be the softest armor. Thorne gripped my waist just tight enough to bruise, but not enough for anyone to see.
Say something.
He muttered through clenched teeth. I took a slow breath. As your Luna, I stand with you, for loyalty, for power, for peace. There was more applause, more noise, but none of it reached me. I couldn't remember the last time I laughed. Not the polite kind, but the deep, messy kind. The kind that made your belly ache and your eyes water. I'd once been someone who laughed that way. Before this life, before him. As the crowd dispersed toward the banquet tables, Thorne leaned in again.
Stay close.
He ordered.
We've caught another rogue near the southern ridge.
I blinked. Another one?
That's the third this week. Someone's testing us.
His jaw tightened.
I want to see who.
I followed him down the path toward the cells, the stone beneath my heels colder than I expected. Thorne didn't look back to see if I was behind him. He never did. I walked with him the way shadows follow sunlight, quietly, always a step behind. The cells were carved into the side of a hill, old and damp, with heavy doors that groaned every time they opened. The guards saluted as Thorne passed. I stayed just behind his right shoulder, invisible to everyone unless he decided to show me off. He stopped in front of the last cell, arms crossed. This one didn't fight. He let them catch him. That was unusual. Rogues always fought. Thorne motioned for the door to open.
Let her see him.
One of the guards hesitated, clearly confused. You mean Luna?
Thorne didn't repeat himself. The guard fumbled with the keys and stepped aside. The moment I stepped in, I felt something shift. Not around me, in me. He was sitting in the corner of the cell, back against the wall, legs stretched out like he owned the place. His hair was messy and dark, falling just above his eyes. There was red stain crusted on his cheek and dirt across his arms, but something about him looked calm, unbothered, like he wasn't in a cage at all. And then he looked up. His eyes met mine like they'd been waiting for this moment, not surprised, not curious, just certain. Something flickered in my chest, a spark I didn't recognize. He stared like he knew me, like I was a painting he'd memorized. My fingers twitched, and I folded my arms just to hide it.
What's your name?
Thorne demanded. The man didn't blink.
You know it already.
Thorne stepped closer.
Don't test me.
The rogue tilted his head slightly, ignoring Thorne completely. He looked straight at me.
So, this is what they turned you into.
I froze. Thorne turned to me sharply.
Do you know him?
No, I said too quickly. I've never seen him before. The man smirked, not cruelly, Like he didn't believe me but wasn't mad about it. His gaze lingered a second longer than it should have. Thorne studied my face.
Leave us.
He said to the guard.
But Alpha,
Now!
The door slammed behind us, echoing through the stone corridor. Thorne's face was unreadable, but his fingers tapped against his thigh. A silent warning,
Don't speak to him again without me present.
he said. I didn't speak.
I saw the way he looked at you.
I swallowed the words rising in my throat. Fighting him never worked. It only made things worse later, behind locked doors. We walked back in silence, but I could still feel that rogue's eyes on me, like his stare had been stitched into my skin. That night, I stood by the window in my room, watching the moon stretch across the sky. My hands gripped the curtain tighter than they needed to. Thorne had fallen asleep long ago. I could hear his breathing, slow and even. But I wasn't tired. I kept seeing that man. The look on his face, the calm behind his bruises, the strange way my chest reacted like something had been cracked open. And his words? So this is what they turned you into. What did he mean by that? I stepped away from the window, walking quietly toward the small mirror above the dresser. My reflection stared back at me. Perfect hair, calm eyes, white silk robe. I looked like a Luna, but I didn't feel like one. I leaned in closer, brushing my fingers against my own cheek. I didn't even recognize her. The woman staring back at me looked lost. A sharp sound broke the quiet. A low growl, barely audible but real. I turned toward the door. Nothing, but it wasn't outside. It was inside me. Something was waking up. Something I hadn't felt in years. The next morning, before the sun even rose, a whisper came through the mind link from the prison guard.
Luna, you need to come. The rogue, he's saying your name.
I slipped out of bed without waking Thorne. He was sprawled across the sheets, one hand resting on the pillow where my head had been. His face looked calm in sleep. Peaceful, almost. Like he wasn't the same man who ordered people to kneel or bleed. But I'd learned not to trust the quiet. Silence could be a trap. I moved quickly, wrapping a light shawl over my shoulders and easing the bedroom door open. The hallway was dark, the floors cold beneath my feet, but I didn't slow down. The guard's voice still echoed in my mind. He's saying your name. I didn't know what I expected when I reached the cells again. Maybe he'd be gone. Maybe it had been a mistake, some kind of mind game. But when the cell door opened, there he was, sitting in the same spot, like he hadn't moved at all. His head tilted slightly when he saw me, like he'd been waiting. The guard stood awkwardly by the wall, glancing between us.
He refused food, just kept saying, Rhea.
He said quietly, then turned to leave, closing the door behind him. I stood still. How do you know my name? The man smirked, that same lazy calm in his posture.
You know me very well, don't you?
My breath caught. My hands clenched around the fabric of my shawl. I don't know you.
You used to laugh louder than anyone on the field, even when you fell flat on your face during training.
His voice was low and smooth, like it carried its own kind of rhythm.
You always smelled like jasmine and trouble.
I stared at him, lips parted. There was something about the way he spoke, casual, confident, but there was a softness tucked underneath, like he wasn't here to hurt me. Still, I didn't move.
You don't remember me?
He asked. I told you, I whispered. I don't. His expression flickered for just a second.
It's Silas.
The name struck something deep inside me, a memory I hadn't touched in years, something buried. The sound of laughter on a hillside, a boy with wild hair and dirt on his knees. Me, barefoot and grinning, racing him down toward the river. That summer before everything changed. My chest rose, slowly, like I couldn't take a full breath. You're lying, I said. Silas leaned forward just a little. His voice dropped.
They told me you were dead, Rhea.
My knees almost gave out. I took a shaky step back, my hand finding the wall.
I came back for you.
he said.
After the war, after the smoke cleared, I came back, and they said the Alpha's daughter didn't make it out, that the fire.
Stop, I said quickly, my throat tightening. You shouldn't be here.
I didn't come to hurt anyone. I just needed to see if it was true. If you were still breathing...
His voice cracked slightly.
You are.
I shook my head. This doesn't change anything. You need to leave before Thorne finds a reason to finish you. His eyes darkened.
He doesn't need a reason. He creates one.
I looked away. That was true, and we both knew it. Why did you come back now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stood up slowly, not aggressively, carefully, like he didn't want me to flinch.
I never stopped thinking about you,
he said.
Even when I ran, even when I lost everything, your face was the one thing I kept.
I swallowed hard, trying to hold myself together. I can't do this, I said.
Why not?
Because I'm not that girl anymore, I snapped, sharper than I meant to. She died a long time ago. He stepped closer to the bars.
Then tell me who you are now. Let me learn her.
His words. They didn't rush in. They sank, like stones in deep water. I turned to leave. I had to. I couldn't stand here in the dark, letting old ghosts pull me apart. But before I reached the door, his voice stopped me again.
You're not safe here, Rhea.
I paused. His tone had shifted. There was no warmth in it now, only warning. What are you talking about? He lowered his voice.
Thorne's not just ruling with fear. He's building something wrong. I've seen what his guards are doing to the outliers. Packs are disappearing. Wolves are vanishing.
I turned slowly to face him. You're a rogue. Of course you'd say that.
Rogues don't scare me,
he said.
Monsters and crowns do.
The door creaked open behind me, and I jumped. Thorne. I froze in place as his shadow filled the doorway. He looked at me, then at Silas, then back again.
Couldn't sleep?
He asked, voice smooth as velvet over glass. I just needed to clear my head, I replied quickly.
Clear it somewhere else.
He said, sharp now.
You don't belong here.
I hesitated. Thorne's smile didn't reach his eyes.
Now.
I walked past him, feeling the heat of his stare on my back. But Silas's voice reached me one last time before the door closed behind me.
Ask him about Project Ember?
The door slammed. My hands trembled. Project Ember? What was that? Back in my room. I closed the door softly and leaned against it, breathing hard. I stared at the fireplace, the flames dancing too brightly, like they knew something I didn't. What was Thorne hiding? And why was Silas here, after all these years, carrying secrets that sounded too real? I pressed my fingers to my temples. None of this made sense, but the part that scared me most? I wanted to see Silas again. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to remember, and maybe, just maybe, I wanted to be remembered too. Later that night, as I tried to sleep, a message came through the private mind link Thorne never let me use. A voice I hadn't heard in years whispered only one sentence.
Rhea, your father was never in that fire.
I didn't sleep. That voice in my mind. It didn't belong to Thorne, and it wasn't Silas. But I knew it. Deep down, beneath the rules I'd learned to obey and the lies I'd been fed for years, I knew it. My father. The voice was older now, worn, frayed at the edges, but I'd recognize that tone anywhere. The way he used to speak when he tucked me in at night. The way he always said my name like it was a promise.
Rhea, your father was never in that fire.
I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the faint light slipping in through the window. My fingers dug into the blanket. My mind was racing in every direction, and all of them led to the same question. What else have they lied about? I didn't even realize I was crying until the salt stung the corner of my lips. Quiet tears. The kind you don't let anyone see. I wiped them away and stood up. I needed answers, not tomorrow, not after breakfast, Now. But I couldn't just ask Thorne. He'd smell it on me, my fear, my doubt, my curiosity. He always could. So I did the only thing I could do in that moment. I went to the library. The pack library was rarely used. Most warriors preferred stories told by the fire, and rumors passed through the sparring yard. Books were for the quiet ones, the forgotten ones. I used to be one of them. I slipped through the doors and closed them softly behind me. The room smelled like paper and dust. The shelves stretched high, packed tight with leather-bound books, scrolls, and records nobody had touched in years. I lit a small lantern and started toward the back wall where the archives were kept. My footsteps echoed softly on the old wooden floor. I searched for anything about Project Ember. Nothing. No scrolls, no index cards, not even a whisper of the name. But something felt off, like I was missing something important, like the truth was standing right in front of me and refusing to speak. That's when I saw it. A tiny crack in the back wall, just between two tall shelves. It wasn't much, but enough to catch my eye. The brick looked newer, out of place. I reached out and pushed gently. Nothing happened. Then I tried pulling. The wall shifted with a soft groan, just enough to reveal a narrow passage behind it. What the hell? I hesitated. Lantern in hand, heart thumping behind my ribs like a fist against a locked door. But I stepped in anyway. The passage was narrow and dark, and the walls pressed in close. It smelled damp and old. I walked slowly, holding the lantern out in front of me, brushing cobwebs out of the way with the back of my hand. After what felt like forever, the passage opened into a small stone room. There were no windows, no furniture, just a long table covered in old files and yellowed maps. In the center was a thick folder stamped with a red mark. Project Ember, Confidential. I stared at it for a long time before reaching out. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were pages and pages of test results, maps of pack borders, and reports from Thorne's inner circle. Most of it was technical, measurements, names, strange codes I didn't understand, but one page made me freeze. A list of uncooperative subjects. And my father's name was at the top. Alec Durnell, status, inactive, monitored. He wasn't dead. He was being watched. I staggered back, knocking the lantern against the wall. The flame flickered wildly. Why would they lie to me? Why fake a fire? Why destroy our entire pack? I tried to breathe, but my chest felt locked. My whole life had been built around that one lie, that I had no family left, that Thorne had taken me in, protected me, made me Luna. I wasn't protected. I was silenced. A sound behind me made me spin around. Footsteps. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. The door to the hidden passage creaked open again. A figure stepped into the room. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair. Silas. His eyes found mine instantly. "What are you doing here?" I whispered.
I was going to ask you the same thing.
He murmured. I held up the folder. "You knew about this?" He looked at the pages, his jaw tightening.
I knew pieces, enough to run, enough to come back.
My voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me about my father?"
I didn't know he was alive. Only that something felt wrong the moment they said you were dead. Everything they told us was too neat, too clean.
My knees buckled, and I sat on the edge of the table. He walked over slowly, then crouched in front of me. His hand brushed against mine, not grabbing, just there. Solid. "Real?"
You okay?
He asked softly. I let out a weak laugh. "Not even close,"
I'll help you,
he said.
if you let me.
"You're in a cage, Silas." His eyes didn't flinch.
Not for long.
There was a silence between us, deep and meaningful, like the space between lightning and thunder. Then his voice dropped to a whisper.
Rhea, there's something else you need to see.
He reached into his jacket. My body tensed, but he pulled out a worn piece of paper, creased, faded. It was a letter, written in my father's handwriting, to me.
My Rhea, if you're reading this, then they haven't broken you. You are stronger than they ever imagined. I'm waiting. Dad.
Before I could speak, an alarm blared through the tunnels, harsh, piercing, close. Then the voice came over the speaker.
Contain the rogue. Destroy on sight.
The alarm screamed through the hidden passage, bouncing off the stone walls like it was hunting us. Finish on sight. I didn't have time to think. I just grabbed Silas by the wrist and yanked him toward the back exit. We didn't speak, didn't stop. The sound of boots stomping above us was already getting louder. They know you're out of the cell, I whispered.
Clearly.
He muttered. We turned left into a tighter hallway, the lantern in my hand swinging wildly. The flame sputtered, but it stayed alive, just like us, for now. This way leads to the old wine cellars, I said quickly. From there, we can get out behind the training grounds. They won't expect that.
You remember all this?
I spent more time hiding in these walls than you'd think. We reached a narrow wooden door. I kicked it open without hesitation. Dust rushed up from the floor, and the sharp smell of damp stone hit me hard. Crates lined the walls. Broken glass crunched under our feet as we moved deeper into the cellar. Behind me, Silas's breathing was steady, controlled. He wasn't panicking. That should have reassured me, but somehow it made the whole thing feel even more real. How did you get out of the cell? I asked. He shot me a sideways look.
Did you really think I'd walk into this place without a plan?
Your plan got you a death sentence.
My plan got me here, with you.
That stopped me, just for a second. But then voices echoed from the hall we'd just come from.
Down here.
Someone shouted. We're running out of time, I hissed.
There's a grate near the far end,
He said, pointing toward the back wall.
I saw it when they brought me in. If it connects to the underground drains, we can get out through there.
I followed his gaze. Sure enough, there it was, half hidden behind a stack of old barrels. Help me move these, I said. We both pushed, our shoulders slamming into the heavy wood. My arms burned, but the barrels shifted just enough for us to reach the grate. I dropped to my knees and tried lifting it. It didn't budge. Silas crouched beside me and jammed a piece of broken wood into the edge. He pushed hard, his muscles flexing beneath his shirt. It gave way with a sharp creak. The opening was narrow, wet, darker than night. I didn't hesitate. I crawled in first, the stone cold against my palms. The tunnel smelled like rust and something worse, but it was freedom. Silas followed close behind, pulling the grate back into place just as boots crashed into the cellar above us. We didn't stop crawling until the voices were gone, until it was just the two of us, breathing in the dark. By the time we surfaced again, dawn was already creeping across the horizon. We came up near the old riverbank, where the woods pressed up against the edge of the pack's land. I hadn't been here in years, not since before I became Luna. The breeze hit my face, cool and soft. I closed my eyes for a second and just let it touch me. Free, even if only for now. Silas stood beside me, hands on his hips, scanning the trees. You sure no one saw us? I asked.
No one that's still breathing.
I turned to him sharply. You didn't destroy anyone, did you? He raised an eyebrow.
I'm many things, Rhea, but I don't destroy, unless I have to.
I studied him carefully. His eyes were darker now. Not from lies, but from the weight of whatever he'd lived through. There was a long silence between us. Then I said, You came back for me. He didn't answer right away, just looked out at the trees.
I thought I could forget.
He said finally.
But every time I closed my eyes, I saw your face. I waited too long to come back. That's on me.
Why now? He looked at me.
Because I heard whispers. That Thorne wasn't just building a kingdom. He was erasing legacies. Your father's, yours, mine.
Something swelled inside my chest. Not love, not yet, but something close. Trust. You really think my father's still alive?
I do.
Then I'm finding him. His lips curved slightly.
Didn't think you'd say anything else.
We stood there for a moment. both of us stained by the same past, the same lies. And then I asked the one question I hadn't dared to before. Silas, why did you leave back then, after the fire? He turned to me slowly. The shadows made his face sharper, older.
I did not leave.
He said softly.
I was dragged out. Thorne's soldiers. They knew who I was to you. They wanted you broken. And me gone.
My breath hitched. All this time, I thought you ran.
I tried to come back. They told me you died. I buried an empty casket for you, Rhea.
I took a step toward him, and for a second, we were close enough that the tips of our fingers brushed. And then, a low growl snapped through the trees. Both of us froze. Silas stepped in front of me instinctively, his whole body tensed, alert. From the shadows, 2 wolves emerged, black fur, golden eyes, snarling. Thorne's guards. They'd tracked us.
I will distract them.
Silas whispered.
You run.
No.
Rhea.
I'm not leaving you again. The wolves crept closer, their teeth bared. One of them shifted, bones snapping, fur vanishing. He rose to his feet, tall and vicious.
You've made a mistake, Luna,
he said.
We were told to bring you back.
And him? His eyes flicked to Silas.
He dies.
I stepped forward, my voice calm and even. You'll have to go through me first. Before either of them could answer, another figure stepped from the woods. He wore a long coat, his face hidden beneath a hood, but I recognized the ring on his hand. The same ring my father used to wear.
That won't be necessary,
The man said.
She's coming with me.
He stepped out of the shadows like he belonged to them. Same height, same building, same stillness. The hood slipped back, slow and deliberate. And there he was. My father, older, yes. His beard was fuller, silver at the chin. There were more lines around his eyes, a small scar running down the side of his neck. But those eyes, they hadn't changed, not one bit. Same stormy blue, same quiet fire behind them. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. He looked at me like I was made of something holy, something precious that he never thought he'd see again.
Rhea.
Just my name, software, steady, like a heartbeat. I took a shaky breath, feeling my knees go weak. Silas reached for me, steadying my arm. Dad? My voice barely came out. His lips twitched, a sad smile pulling at the corners.
Yeah, baby. It's me.
My throat burned. I watched our home burn. I buried an urn with nothing in it. I believed you were.
I know.
He took a step closer.
They made sure you believed it.
Silas didn't lower his guard.
You were with the resistance?
Dad gave him a curt glance.
I lead it.
Silas didn't flinch, but his hand moved closer to mine, protective but quiet about it. Why now? I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. Why show up now?
Because the plan changed. Thorne's accelerating things. Your escape pushed him. He's hunting harder. And you're no longer safe just watching from inside those walls.
He looked at me like he could still see the ashes on my skin.
I wanted to come for you years ago,
He said.
but they were watching you, every hour, every step. If I'd shown up then, you'd be dead.
You should have let me decide that. His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. The guards behind him shifted, confused.
You're her father?
One muttered. Dad didn't bother answering. He looked at them once, and they backed off. No command, no growl, just a look. That's what made him alpha before Thorne stole everything.
Silas,
Dad said, turning back.
you're not safe either. You've done enough. You can go.
But Silas didn't move.
She stays, I stay.
That hit me square in the chest. Dad raised a brow.
You sure about that?
Silas didn't blink.
I've been sure since the moment I walked back into this hellhole.
Dad stared at him for a beat too long, then gave the smallest nod of approval.
Then let's move.
We walked in silence through the woods, the guards flanking us like shadows. Not a word passed between them. Silas walked close, his body slightly angled toward mine, like he was still expecting a fight. My father led, never looking back. I couldn't stop staring at him. The man I mourned, the man who haunted my dreams. And now he was walking in front of me like nothing had ever changed. But everything had. When we reached the edge of the river, Alex stopped beside a moss-covered rock and crouched. He pressed his hand against the ground. There was a soft click, and a hatch opened. He looked back.
Underground. Come on.
I hesitated, just a second. Then I followed him in. The tunnel was narrow, lined with stone and torchlight. Old, but dry. Lived in. Far deeper than Thorne's passageways.
This leads to the bunker,
Dad said.
Built it back when I still wore the Alpha title. Thorne never found it. We made sure of that.
You built this before the war? I asked. He nodded.
Always had a feeling I'd need a backup plan.
You were right. We kept walking until the tunnel opened into a wide underground chamber, warm, quiet, filled with murmurs of people moving, talking. Some I recognized from old pack gatherings. Others I'd never seen before. And every one of them froze when they saw me.
Is that? That's Rhea Donnell.
She's alive?
Dad lifted a hand, signaling them to relax.
She's not just alive.
He said.
She's with us now.
The silence broke into hushed voices, whispers full of weight and wonder. I turned toward him, my voice barely a whisper. They thought I was a traitor.
They were told you were dead, or worse, that you chose Thorne.
I didn't choose any of this.
I know.
His hand landed gently on my shoulder.
That's why you're here now, to fix it.
Later, Dad pulled me aside into a small room, lit by a single lamp and lined with maps. Silas stayed by the door, arms crossed, quiet but listening. Dad leaned on the table and tapped one of the pins on the map.
Thorne's building something.
He said.
Something that uses werewolf blood, strong royal.
I swallowed hard. Mine?
Yours, and others like you. You're not the only alpha daughter he's stolen from fallen packs.
What is he building?
We're not sure. Some kind of weapon. A biological one. But we do know this. He's not doing it alone. Someone on the inside is helping him.
My blood ran cold. Inside, our old pack? Dad didn't answer. Instead, he slid a photo across the table. I stared at it. At the face I thought I knew. Lera, my hand trembled. My advisor, she raised me after. She works for Thorne, Dad said.
Always has. She kept you close to watch your every move.
I couldn't breathe.
She's the reason we couldn't get to you,
He added.
She knew where you were every minute of every day. We believe she's part of the Project Ember initiative.
Everything felt like it cracked inside me. I trusted her.
I know.
A long silence filled the room. Then Dad said something I didn't expect.
You're the key, Rhea. You were born with alpha blood. But Thorne made you forget what it means. It's time to remember.
My eyes met his. How? Dad's voice lowered.
You train, you lead, you fight, and when the time comes, you take back your pack.
I let the words settle. They didn't scare me. They felt right. Like putting on a coat I hadn't worn in years, but still fit perfectly. Silas stepped closer.
If we're doing this, we need to move fast. Lera won't sit still once she realizes Rhea's gone.
She won't have the chance, I said. Dad stared at me a long moment. Then he smiled. The first real smile I'd seen in years. Just as I turned to leave the room, a scout burst in. Sweaty, pale, eyes wild.
They're here!
He gasped.
They found us.
The scout's voice barely faded before the entire underground bunker shifted. Not physically, but something in the air changed. A murmur. A ripple of dread passing through everyone who heard.
They are here.
I blinked at him, my fingers gripping the edge of the table.
How close?
Dad asked, already moving.
Close enough.
The scout answered, panting.
5 at the tree line, maybe more behind, but they knew exactly where to come.
Dad turned to Silas.
Get her out, now.
Silas didn't argue. He stepped toward me and grabbed my hand.
Come on.
I froze. We can't just leave them,
This isn't the fight.
he said.
It's bait. You walk into it, they win.
He wasn't wrong, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. I can fight, I whispered.
I know. But not now. Not yet.
He pulled me down the hallway as Dad barked orders, his voice echoing off stone.
Lock the south tunnel, barricade the west, keep the civilians in the lower chamber.
Voices shouted back. Boots thundered across the floor. I caught glimpses of people I didn't know, some barely older than me, some already bruised, armed, wild-eyed. And I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. Silas led me through a narrow path I hadn't noticed before. Moss-covered stone gave way to carved rock, more natural than man-made. Where does this go? I asked.
Back exit, used for emergencies. Guess what this counts as?
I couldn't help it, I laughed. Just once, sharp and bitter. I thought we'd have more time, I said.
We never get time. We steal it.
We broke into the open just as the first sound of combat echoed behind us. A low snarl, then a scream, then nothing. My spine went stiff. I should go back. Silas grabbed my shoulders, turning me to face him. His eyes weren't just serious, they were angry.
Rhea, you don't know what they're after yet, if you get caught.
I won't.
You're not ready.
I don't care. He stared at me for a breath, then another.
You'll get ready,
He said.
and when it's time, you'll burn them to ash, but not today.
He pressed a hand to the base of my neck, just beneath my hairline, not forceful, but grounding. I swallowed hard and didn't look away. We ran. Branches scratched at my arms. Mud clung to my boots. The forest wasn't friendly tonight. It tugged and pulled, like it wanted to keep me there. And maybe it had a right to, because somewhere behind us, people were fighting in my name. We stopped only when Silas hit a ridge, his hand going up. He looked out over the trees. I followed his line of sight. Smoke. Not thick, not yet, but it was rising, fast. The bunker. My gut twisted with something too tangled to name. Fear, rage, helplessness, all of it. I sat on a cold rock, pressing my palm against my knee. My skin was slick with sweat. My chest hurt. Silas crouched beside me.
We lost that base.
Do you think Dad made it out?
He's smarter than he looks. He'll find us.
What if he doesn't?
Then we make a new plan.
He pulled something from his belt. A roll of parchment, old and worn at the edges. I leaned in. What's that?
Map.
He said.
Drawn by rogues who lived on the edge of Thorne's lands for years. Shows all the safe zones and one special zone.
I looked at the markings. Handwritten notes, symbols, lines that twisted and curved through forest, river, and ruins. What's this star? I asked, pointing.
That's Ember Rock, the place where they first tested whatever weapon they're working on. It's also where they're keeping the other Alpha's daughters.
My hand stopped mid-air. They're still alive. He met my gaze.
Some of them.
We found an old stone ruin by sunset, hidden in a ring of cypress trees. The roof was gone, but the stone walls stood. It felt like no one had touched it in years. Silas checked the perimeter while I picked through a pile of dry leaves and broken branches. The quiet was sharp, like it was listening. Finally, he sat across from me on a flat slab of rock. I thought Dad was dead, I said quietly.
He said Lera betrayed us.
She did. I trusted her.
Then that's her failure, not yours.
There was a pause, the kind that settles between people when something heavier than words is hanging in the air. I used to think love was loud, I said. Big, bold, like fireworks.
And now?
I think it's quieter than I thought. Still, solid. The kind that stays, even when you're running. Silas didn't smile, but the edge of his mouth lifted, just enough.
Sounds like you've been thinking too much.
I smirked. It's your fault. I should have slept. I didn't. The fire crackled. The wind whispered through the trees. I lay on my side, watching him across the space between us. His back was to me, his shoulders steady, one boot still on. I didn't want to wake him, but I whispered anyway. Silas? He didn't move. I used to dream about getting out, about what it would feel like. A beat passed. Then he turned his head just enough for his voice to carry.
And?
It feels like nothing I expected, and everything I needed. Silas didn't answer right away. Then, quiet, gruff, he said,
I'm glad I was there to see it.
Just as I closed my eyes, a soft rustle hit the edge of the trees. Not animal, not wind. A figure stepped out, cloaked, slow-moving, face hidden beneath a long hood. Silas was on his feet in a second, and the figure raised both hands. I come with news, the voice said, feminine, familiar. Then the hood slipped back, and I gasped. Lera? The moment I saw her face, every bone in my body went still. Like the forest had turned to stone, like even the fire didn't dare crackle. Lera, standing there, wrapped in a dark cloak, eyes darker than I remembered. She looked thinner, pale, and yet something sharp lived behind her gaze. She didn't look like the girl who braided flowers into my hair. She looked like she'd been through something hell couldn't even hold. Silas didn't lower his blade.
Move an inch and you lose your head.
Nice to see you too, she said, her voice dry.
Give me one reason.
He growled.
Not to end this right now.
I stepped between them. Wait, he didn't move, but his jaw locked like he was biting down something bitter. I stared at her. How did you find us? I didn't. I followed the smoke. Figured your dad would move you east. Why? So you could help Thorne finish the job? Her eyes softened. Rhea, I didn't betray you. My throat tightened. You disappeared the same night I was taken. I had to. I didn't know they'd move that fast. You left me. I left to protect you. I laughed, but it wasn't warm. You expect me to believe that? No, she said quietly. But I'm telling you anyway. We sat around the fire, Lera on the far side, Silas leaning against a tree, arms crossed, never looking away from her. I stayed between them, but closer to Silas. My body didn't trust her, even if my memories begged me to. She looked at the flames like they were telling her secrets. I was taken the week before the festival, she began. 2 men. Rogues, I thought, but they weren't. They worked for Thorne. I blinked. Wait, before the festival? That early? She nodded slowly. They didn't take me for ransom. They wanted something else. Information, names, weak points. They thought I was close to you, and they were right. I folded my arms tight. So you gave them what they wanted. No, she said firmly. I stalled, lied, fed them small things that didn't matter, enough to buy time. Silas snorted.
And how long did you keep up that act? Before it became real.
I escaped, she shot back. Look at me. Do I look like someone who got paid to betray her only friend? She pulled back the edge of her cloak. Scars. 3 long raised lines across her collarbone. Raw. Recent. I flinched before I could stop myself. I got out 3 nights ago. Took me this long to find you. I stared at her. My stomach wasn't sure what to believe. My head definitely wasn't, but something in her voice, it didn't sound like lies. You should have told me, I whispered. They would have destroyed you, she said, voice cracking. They wanted to. You don't understand, Rhea. They don't want power. They want to erase the bloodline. The fire popped. No one spoke for a while. Finally, I asked the question hanging between all of us. Why come back now? Lera met my eyes. Because Thorne has something he shouldn't, and if we don't stop him soon, he's going to tear down every pack that ever protected Aluna. Silas stepped forward.
What does he have?
Her lips tightened. The crescent stone. He froze. I didn't. What is that? They looked at each other, then at me.
It's not a weapon.
Silas said carefully.
It's worse.
Lera added, it's an amplifier. What kind of amplifier? For power, she said. Specifically, alpha power. The words hit me sideways. I sat back, eyes narrowing. You mean it makes alphas stronger?
It doesn't just boost them.
Silas said.
It binds loyalty, forces obedience, even over distance.
Mind control? I whispered. Something like that, Lera replied. It was banned 100 years ago. We thought it was destroyed, but Thorne found it, or rebuilt it. And now he's testing it. My blood ran cold. On who? Lera looked away. Silas already knew.
The girls,
He said.
the alpha daughters.
I pushed to my feet, pacing. My boots scraped against the stone. He's using them, I said, like practice runs. Lera's voice was faint. They can't break free. I saw one of them. She didn't even blink when they hurt her. I turned to Silas. We have to stop it. He sighed, running a hand down his face.
It's not that easy.
I don't care if it's easy, I snapped. They're using those girls like experiments. We have to do something. He looked at me for a long moment, then said,
You don't just want to stop him, you want to take him down.
I didn't flinch. Yes, Lera's voice was quiet. Then you'll need allies, real ones. I've got Dad. And maybe 10 others. That's not enough. You'll need a council. Silas raised a brow.
You think they'll back her? After everything?
If she shows them what she can do, Lera said, they might. That night, none of us slept. We laid on cold stone, side by side, but I knew none of us closed our eyes for long. In the middle of the night, I felt Silas shift beside me, not toward me, but close enough to know he hadn't left. It felt like trust. It felt like a beginning. At dawn, we packed what little we had and started walking west, toward the council, toward the next phase. But just as the trees thinned, a shape stumbled out from the bushes ahead. Stains, barefoot, gasping. It was Dad. He collapsed at my feet and gasped. They've taken the stone to Ember Rock. We have 3 days before he uses it on all of us. Dad's face was a mess of stains, dirt, and bruises. His breathing came in uneven gulps as he lay on the forest floor. I dropped to my knees beside him, fingers hovering just short of touching his face. Dad, hey, stay with me. His eyes cracked open. One of them was nearly swollen shut.
They moved it.
He whispered.
The stone. It's at Ember Rock now. Thorne's building something. Something big.
Silas knelt beside me and pulled out a flask, tipping water into Dad's mouth. Lera kept lookout, blades already in hand, scanning the trees like she expected something to leap out at us. What happened? I asked. Das swallowed and winced.
I followed a supply route, thought I could track the energy around the stone, but they caught me.
He looked up at me, shame coloring his voice.
I broke Rhea. I tried not to, but they used something. I couldn't fight it.
It's okay, I said, though it wasn't. You got away. That's what matters. He gave a bitter laugh.
Barely. I think someone let me go.
Silas frowned.
Why would they do that?
To lure us in, Dad whispered.
Thorne wants you to come.
The silence after those words wrapped around us like frost. I met Silas's eyes. He didn't speak, but I could tell we were thinking the same thing. This wasn't just strategy anymore. It was bait. And I was the rabbit they were waiting for. I stood slowly. Then we're going. Lera looked up. You don't even know what's waiting there. But I know what's at risk if we do nothing. Silas stood too, brushing dirt off his palms.
We can't walk in blind. Ember Rock's surrounded by high ridges. It's almost impossible to get in without being seen.
Almost.
Dad rasped.
There's a tunnel, old escape route beneath the ridge. Few people know it exists. Thorne blocked the entrance, but I marked it with red thread.
Lera's lips twitched. Red thread? What are you, a tailor? It was the only thing I had on me. Silas ran a hand through his hair.
If it's still unguarded, we can use it, but we need time.
You've got 3 days.
Dad said.
After that, Thorne's holding a demonstration. He's inviting the northern packs. He's going to show them the stone.
Show them what? I asked, heart thudding for answers. Lera's voice was low. That he can make their strongest alpha's bow. We hiked until nightfall. Dad could barely walk, so I took his arm, letting him lean on me even though it slowed us down. Every step felt like time slipping through our fingers. Do you think I was wrong to leave the way I did? I asked Silas quietly as we walked. He didn't look at me at first. Then, finally,
No, you survived. That's not wrong.
but I left people behind. I left my pack.
You were trapped. That wasn't your choice.
His voice was calm, but firm. Like he wasn't just telling me, he was trying to make me believe it. Feels like I'm still running,
You're not.
he said.
You're building something now.
I didn't answer, but I carried his words with me, like armor. We reached a small cave by midnight, cold, damp, hidden behind a curtain of vines. As soon as Dad lay down, he passed out. Lera sat at the mouth of the cave, sharpening her knives with the kind of focus only guilt brings. I sat with Silas by a small fire, heat licking at our boots.
I never trusted her after she disappeared.
He said suddenly, eyes on Lera. I did, I admitted. She used to braid my hair before full moons. Made up stories about wolves in love with humans. Said I'd fall for a rogue one day. He glanced at me.
And did you?
The fire popped. Not sure yet, I said softly. His eyes didn't leave mine.
You will be.
The moment between us stretched long, like the pause before lightning touches the ground. But then Dad groaned, and the mood snapped. I stood up and walked to him, brushing his hair back gently. We'll stop him, I whispered.
Promise?
I swear it. By morning, Lera had mapped out a path to Ember Rock using charcoal on a flat stone. We can get close by sundown if we cut through the ravine, but it's steep. And crawling with Thorne's scouts. We take it, I said. No hesitation? She asked. None. We moved faster this time, pushing through brush, ducking under low branches. Around midday, we spotted the first patrol. 4 men in Thorne's colors. Silas held up a hand, then motioned for silence. I pressed my back against a tree, heart hammering against my ribs. He turned to me.
Stay behind me.
No.
Rhea?
I said no. We do this together. He gave me a look, half frustration, half pride.
Fine, just don't get stabbed.
Lera grinned. No promises. The ambush was quick and quiet. Silas moved like a shadow, swift, clean. I watched the way his body moved, how focused he became. There was nothing soft about him when he fought. He was a storm wrapped in flesh. I took down the last man myself. He lunged, and I ducked, grabbing a branch and swinging it into his throat. He hit the ground hard and didn't get up again. Silas stared at me.
That was brutal.
I've had practice.
You learn fast.
I have to. We reached the tunnel's hidden entrance by nightfall. A red thread fluttered from a branch, just like Dad said. But the entrance was sealed by jagged stone.
I can move it.
Silas said, voice low. He dug in, using his shoulder to push against the rocks. I helped, pressing my hands to the cold stone. It gave with a low groan, just enough for us to squeeze through. Inside, it smelled of old dust and forgotten things. The walls were damp, the air still. It felt like stepping into a memory that didn't belong to us. Lera lit a torch. This tunnel runs straight under Ember Rock, comes up behind the old weapon hall. If we're lucky, we'll reach it by sunrise. And if we're not, I asked. We'll know, she said, because we won't wake up. We moved deeper into the tunnel, one step at a time, and then, just before we rounded the corner, we heard footsteps, not ahead, behind us. The footsteps behind us were steady, not rushed, not panicked. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. Lera froze mid-step. The torchlight flickered in her hand as she slowly turned her head back. Silas, I whispered. Did you hear that? He didn't answer. Just stepped in front of me and pulled his dagger from his belt. The grip he had on it, tight. like he already knew who it might be. The tunnel walls seemed to narrow, shadows pressing closer around us as we waited. Another step echoed, then another, then the voice came.
Still can't sneak worth a damn, can you, Rhea?
That voice, low, rough, too familiar. My throat dried up. Caleb? He stepped out of the shadows like a memory that refused to stay buried. Caleb, my brother. His hair was longer now, pulled back into a knot. A scar ran across his jaw, faded but brutal. His eyes still held that old wildfire, unpredictable and sharp. I took a step forward before I could stop myself. You're alive, he gave me a crooked smile.
Yeah, took you long enough to look.
My chest ached. I hadn't seen him since the rebellion, since the day Thorne declared Caleb a traitor and dragged our parents to the square. I thought he was dead. I looked for you, I whispered.
No, you didn't,
he said, cutting me off.
You curled up in Thorne's palace and played Luna.
Silas moved beside me, protective, tense.
You were watching her?
Caleb tilted his head.
I watched everything. You think I left my sister in that pit without eyes on her?
Lera stepped forward. Why are you here now? Caleb looked her up and down.
Still breathing, huh? Guess miracles happen.
She raised an eyebrow. Didn't miss your sarcasm, thanks.
Would have sent a postcard, but rogue life doesn't come with a mailbox.
Stop, I said. Both of you. I turned to Caleb. Why are you following us?
I heard about the tunnel. Figured you'd take the risk. I came to make sure you don't get yourselves finished before we even make it to Ember Rock.
Then why hide?
I needed to be sure you were still... you,
he said. That stung, like he'd peeled something raw open inside me. I never stopped being me.
Did you flinch when he touched you?
Caleb asked, voice lower now.
Did you smile while he burned our people's homes?
I looked away. He nodded slowly.
That's what I thought.
Silas stepped in.
She risked everything to leave him. Don't stand here and act like she owes you a timeline for her healing.
Caleb stared at him.
You're the rogue who burned 5 of Thorne's outposts, right?
Silas didn't blink.
6, but who's counting?
Caleb's lip twitched.
So that's your type now, Rhea? Bad boy with a vendetta?
Stop it, I snapped. This isn't a reunion. We have a mission. Caleb reached into his coat and pulled out a map.
And I have better intel than Dad did. You're going to walk into a trap if you follow that tunnel straight to the weapon hall.
Lera squinted at the map. What kind of trap?
There's a backup force stationed behind the walls now. Thorne knew you'd come through this way.
Then what do we do? I asked. He pointed to a fork in the tunnel.
Split off here. It leads to an old aquifer that connects to the inner sanctum. No guards, just risk of drowning.
Silas muttered.
Great. Water and darkness. My favorite combo.
We took a vote. Lera was against trusting Caleb. Silas was neutral, but wary, and Dad still half-conscious, muttered something about fish and passed back out. I turned to Caleb. If you betray us... He held up his hand.
I already betrayed you once. That was enough.
I paused. What are you talking about? His mouth opened, then closed.
Not now.
Why not?
Because if I tell you here,
he said quietly,
you'll never trust me again.
We took the left path. The tunnel narrowed, colder now, the damp pressing into our clothes and bones. Caleb walked ahead with the torch, pointing out cracks in the wall, jagged rocks, and places the stone had almost caved.
I memorized these tunnels after they tossed me down here,
he said.
Used to count the echoes to stay sane.
How long were you here? I asked.
2 weeks. No light, no food the first 3 days. I ate moss.
I exhaled slowly. I'm sorry.
No, you're not,
he said, but softer this time.
Not really.
Eventually, we reached the aquifer. The torchlight danced off black water that stretched out ahead, too still to be natural.
I'll go first.
Silas said, dropping his gear and sliding into the water with barely a splash. I followed, the cold biting up my legs, curling around my ribs. My breath caught at the shock of it. Lera and Caleb brought up the rear. Dad stayed behind in the tunnel, hidden and guarded by a signal flare in case of emergency. We moved silently, pushing through the icy water. Each stroke felt endless. The tunnel's ceiling dropped low at one point, forcing us to duck beneath the surface. I could feel the strain in my muscles, the pressure building behind my eyes, but I kept going. Silas reached a ledge first. He climbed up, turned, and pulled me up after him.
The stone beneath my hands was slick. My clothes stuck to me like a second skin.
He caught me as I slipped, steadying me by the waist. Our eyes locked. "We made it," I whispered. "For now." We were standing in a forgotten part of Ember Rock. The walls were carved with old symbols, runes worn down by time. A huge stone door blocked the passage ahead. "What is this place?" Lera asked. Caleb ran his fingers over the markings.
This was where the Alpha Kings used to meet, before Thorne gutted the tradition.
"Why would the tunnel lead here?" I asked. Silas stepped closer.
Because this is where the truth lives.
The stone door cracked. It didn't open, it cracked from the inside. And a voice, low and almost inhuman, whispered from the other side.
Lunaria, we've been waiting.
The crack widened. Stone dust floated through the air, thick enough to coat my tongue. I raised my arm to shield my eyes, stepping closer without realizing it. Silas reached for me, his fingers grazing my wrist, pulling me back gently, but I didn't stop. That voice, it hadn't been loud, it hadn't roared or shouted, but it knew my name. It sounded like it had always known it. The door creaked again, splitting right down the center like something ancient had just taken its first breath in years. "What the hell is behind that?" Lera whispered, her face pale under the flickering torchlight. "I don't know," I said quietly, "but it knows me." The stone panels slid open slowly, revealing a circular chamber carved into the mountain itself. Runes glowed softly across the walls, faint, pulsing, alive somehow. The space smelled warm, not like fire, but like the scent that clings to earth after rain. It was comforting in a way that made me uncomfortable, like it shouldn't be. Silas stepped in first, scanning every inch of the room. Caleb followed with a torch. I walked in last, my footsteps soft against the smooth floor. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and resting on it was something that didn't belong in our world. It was a book, not just any book. It had no title, no spine, no name carved into the cover. The leather was dark, cracked, but when I got closer, I saw that the cracks weren't natural. They formed the shape of a wolf, and beneath it, a woman's eyes. I reached out, fingertips barely grazing the edge of the book, when a voice stopped me cold.
You touch it, and nothing will ever be the same.
I turned sharply, and there he was. Not a ghost, not a stranger, but someone I'd once seen standing beside Thorne in court, wearing the robes of an advisor. A man I thought had died during the first rebellion. Eland, the historian, the seer.
You were executed,
Caleb said, narrowing his eyes. Eland smiled, calm as the moon.
Thorne tried, but the mountain chose otherwise.
His voice echoed strangely, not in volume, but in weight. Every word felt like it landed somewhere inside me I didn't know existed. "What is this place?" I asked.
You already know.
"I really don't,"
You do.
he said, stepping toward the book.
Not with your mind, but with your blood.
Silas shifted beside me.
Speak plainly. We don't have time for riddles.
Eland looked straight at me.
Rhea, do you know why the Moonstone never accepted Thorne?
My mouth felt dry. "He was chosen through the bloodline,"
No.
Eland said.
He forced the bond, but the Moonstone and the mountain it rests beneath only bends for one kind of power.
He tapped the cover of the book.
A Luna born of shadow and truth. A Luna marked not by birthright, but by betrayal.
Something in my chest stirred. A memory, maybe, or a warning. Are you saying I was chosen? Eland looked at me the way someone stares at a storm rolling in across the sea.
You weren't just chosen, you were hidden.
I glanced at Caleb. His jaw tightened. He didn't look surprised. You knew? I asked him.
I suspected.
He muttered.
When Mom died, she said something strange. She said, "Keep her from the book." I thought she meant a diary, but now...
Now it made a twisted kind of sense. I had always felt like I didn't belong in Thorne's court. Not because I didn't fit, because something inside me refused to. Elend motioned to the book again.
It holds the prophecy of the Luna of the Hollow Fang.
That's a myth, Lera said.
It was.
Elend replied.
Until you walked through that door.
I reached toward the book again, slower this time. The leather was warm. It pulsed softly under my fingertips, like it had a heartbeat of its own. When I opened it, the pages were blank. At first. Then ink spilled across the parchment, not written, but grown. The letters curled in loops I didn't recognize, but somehow I understood. The first line read, "When the false alpha falls, the Luna shall rise from the ashes." The words felt too big to carry, too dangerous to believe. What does this mean? I asked. Elend looked at me, his face softening.
It means you're not running anymore. You're returning.
Returning to what?
To who you were before the lies, before the collar of Luna was placed around your throat like a leash.
I stepped back from the book. I don't want to lead anyone. I just wanted to be free. Elend's voice dropped.
You can't be free without freeing others. That's the weight of a true Luna.
Silas touched my arm.
You don't have to choose now. We can keep going. We can destroy the Moonstone.
Elend looked at him.
And if you do, the war doesn't end. It gets worse. Chaos fills the hole.
Then what do you suggest?
Caleb asked.
We awaken the Hollow Fang.
That made the room fall quiet. Even the torch seemed to hold its breath. You mean the pack that disappeared a century ago? Lera said. That was just legend. Elend shook his head.
They weren't destroyed. They were bound, locked in sleep beneath the mountain, waiting for the one who could wake them.
He looked at me again, and I knew what was coming before he said it.
You're the key.
I stared at the book, at the wolf carved into its cover, the hollow fang, the ancient warriors who'd once defied every alpha king who tried to rule without heart. If they were real, if they were alive, I could lead them. But I didn't know if I wanted to. What if I wasn't strong enough? What if this was just another trap dressed as destiny? Silas stepped beside me.
Whatever happens next, I'm with you.
Caleb added.
Even if I don't like it, you've got me.
Lera rolled her eyes. Well, I didn't swim through freezing water just to turn around. Let's do it. I reached out, placed both palms on the book, and the runes on the wall exploded in light. The stone chamber rumbled. Dust poured from the ceiling. And then, a sound like 1,000 wolves howling all at once tore through the room. Deep, unnatural, ancient. From the far end of the chamber, a second door slid open slowly. And behind it, eyes, dozens of them, glowing in the dark, watching me. The hollow fang was waking up. The room went still, except for those eyes. They stared at me from the shadows beyond the second door. Not blinking, not moving, just glowing. A dull, unnatural silver that didn't reflect the torchlight, but swallowed it whole. I didn't dare move. Neither did anyone else. Lera gripped her dagger tight. Silas stepped in front of me before I could stop him. Caleb's back was nearly touching mine, eyes sweeping from left to right. And then, from the silence, a voice spoke. But it wasn't a whisper. It was inside my head. Daughter of silence, speak your truth, or bleed your lie. I staggered. Did you hear that? I asked, looking at Silas. He stared at me like I'd said something in a language no one else knew. You didn't hear it? I whispered. He shook his head slowly.
Rhea, what are you hearing?
My throat was dry. Voices, in my head. They know who I am. Another voice followed. Deeper, older, filled with weight. She carries the scar of betrayal, and the scent of a crown not taken. The glow behind the door began to move. Figures stepped forward, slow, silent, one by one. There were 7 of them, each cloaked in dark, weathered robes. Their bodies thin, tall, wrapped in something that looked like fur, but moved like smoke. Their eyes didn't blink, and not one of them touched the floor. They floated, barely an inch above the stone, but they moved with purpose, as if gravity had decided it was safer not to hold them.
Stay behind me.
Silas whispered. No, I said, stepping forward. He grabbed my arm.
What are you doing?
I think they're waiting for me to speak.
Or waiting for you to mess up?
Same thing, isn't it? I turned toward them, heart thudding in my ears, not from fear, but because something inside me remembered them. Not their faces, not their voices, but their presence. Like an old story I was too young to understand. One of them stopped directly in front of me, a woman. Her skin was pale, but not lifeless, like the light hadn't touched her in centuries. Her eyes were so silver, they looked like mirrors. Rhea of the fading line, she said aloud this time, her voice echoing off the stone, slow and deliberate. You've broken the seal. Do you come to finish what the last Luna could not? I swallowed. What did she try to finish? The woman tilted her head. Free will. That answer sat in my chest like a stone. The hollow fang wasn't just a pack. It was a rebellion trapped in time. And now I had woken it. Behind her, the others circled slowly, forming a loose ring. I didn't like how they moved. Too quiet, too steady, like they weren't truly alive, or were trying to remember how to be. The woman in front of me stepped closer. We were bound by our Luna when the Alpha Kings declared us a threat. She gave her life to stop them from using us as weapons. But she failed. Because her daughter... She paused, eyes digging into me. Was taken. I couldn't breathe for a second. You think that daughter was me? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out a hand and placed it on my forehead. The world dropped out beneath my feet. Suddenly, I was standing in a snow-covered clearing. But it wasn't me, not this me. I was in the body of someone else. A woman with long braids and scars across her arms. She wore silver armor that shimmered even beneath stains. Her hands were trembling, holding a baby wrapped in a wolf fur blanket. Soldiers closed in, torches, growls, chains. The woman turned to a man, tall, fierce, wearing a crest I'd never seen. Take her, she whispered. Take her and hide her, no matter what. The man's hands shook.
You won't survive this.
She smiled through tears. I don't have to. Just keep her from the moonstone. The vision snapped. I gasped and stumbled back into my body, knees weak. Silas caught me.
Rhea, what just happened?
I looked at the woman in robes. That baby, that was me. She didn't deny it. You were taken before your name was spoken, she said. Raised among enemies. Silenced before you could speak truth. And yet, your blood remembered. I rubbed my forehead. So why did you call me here? What do you want? Another voice spoke from the circle, a man this time.
To lead.
To war? I asked. To peace, the woman corrected. But peace does not come quietly. They stepped back in unison, then turned to reveal a second chamber behind them, dark, wide, and filled with glowing symbols across the stone floor. But what took my breath away weren't the carvings. It was the wolves. Lined across the space like statues, there had to be over 50 of them. Still, silent, but not dead. Sleeping, huge, scarred, otherworldly creatures. Some black as shadow, others white as bone. They pulsed with magic, even in rest. You've woken the council, the woman said. But the fang still sleeps. I stepped toward them, drawn by something I couldn't explain. How do I wake them? Her eyes turned sharp. With truth. That night, We camped in the chamber. Eland returned from another tunnel with old supplies, blankets, flint, food sealed in preserved packs. No one said much. We all felt it. We were standing in the center of a forgotten legacy, and I was the one expected to bring it back. As the others slept, I sat alone near the book. Its pages were still glowing, faintly now, like it had more to say, but was waiting for the right moment. Silas walked over quietly, crouching beside me.
Still not sleeping?
How can I? I smiled a little. Turns out I might be a legend.
You've always been something else, Rhea.
I looked at him. Are you scared?
Of what comes next? Hell yes.
Me too. He reached out and took my hand.
But I trust you.
He said softly.
And I'd rather walk through hell with you than live safely without you.
That made my chest ache in the best way. I leaned against his shoulder, and for the first time in days, I felt warm, safe, almost. I turned to check the book again before sleeping, but it was gone. The pedestal was empty. In its place, a single word was carved into the stone. Run! From the far chamber, a growl echoed, a low, guttural warning. And this time, it wasn't the hollow fang. Something else had woken up, something that should have stayed buried. The growl came again, deeper, closer. It didn't sound like a wolf. It sounded like something that had learned to mimic one, something that hadn't used its voice in a long time and was now remembering how to tear it loose from its throat. I stood frozen, eyes locked on the empty pedestal. The book was gone, vanished without a trace, but the carved word in the stone, run. I spun around. Silas, I whispered, wake the others, now. He didn't ask, just moved. By the time everyone was on their feet, the growl had become a rumble, steady, rising from the walls like they were alive. Dust sprinkled down from the ceiling, and one of the ancient pillars cracked at the base. Back tunnel, Lera said, already pulling Caleb toward the north end.
Now, move.
Eland paused only long enough to grab two of the ancient scrolls.
That growl wasn't hollow fang.
He muttered. I know, I replied, not slowing down. It was worse. We sprinted into the darkness, torches flickering, feet scraping against uneven stone. I kept glancing behind me. Nothing followed us yet, but I could feel it, like its breath was just behind my shoulder. The ground shook again, this time hard enough to send me stumbling into the wall. And then, a scream. Lera. Silas, light over here, I shouted, heart racing. The torchlight caught something, barely, but it was enough. There, dragging itself from the cracks in the wall, was a creature made of sinew and bone. Its limbs were wrong, too long, too sharp, with claws that scraped sparks off the floor. Its face was half wolf, half... nothing I'd seen before, empty sockets, teeth like broken glass. It wasn't alive, but it wasn't dead either.
No silver, no weapons.
Caleb gasped.
Nothing's going to slow that thing down.
We don't fight it, I said. We trap it. Lera stood, her leg bleeding, eyes furious. We don't even know what it is.
I know what it's not.
Eland said quietly.
It's not from this world.
The creature snapped its jaw and crawled another step forward. Its claws cut grooves into the stone like butter. And then it did something that made my skin crawl. It spoke. Not with words, not out loud, but into me. You are not hers. You are mine. I stumbled back, grabbing Silas's arm to stay steady. It's trying to claim me.
No one's claiming you.
Silas growled, stepping in front of me.
Can we run faster, maybe?
Caleb muttered, clutching Lera's waist as they started moving again. We bolted. Through a narrow passage, across a broken bridge that looked like it would fall with one more footstep. But we didn't stop. Not until we hit another stone door, this one sealed with vines and old glyphs, glowing faintly. Open it, Lera yelled. Eland ran his hands over the markings.
It's blood magic, Luna-born blood.
Everyone looked at me, Of course, I pressed my palm to the stone. It burned. Not on the skin, but inside. Like the glyphs were reading me, testing if I belonged. The vines curled back slowly. The stone groaned. Then, just as the door cracked open, the growl returned. But it wasn't behind us anymore. It was ahead.
Rhea, step back.
Silas said quickly. I couldn't. I was frozen. That voice, whatever had spoken through that creature, was now echoing from the next chamber.
2?
Caleb whispered, eyes wide.
There are 2 of them?
Eland raised his torch.
No, it's not 2. It's the same thing. It's everywhere.
The vines recoiled entirely, revealing the room inside. And in the center of that room was a mirror. Not glass, not metal. It looked like water trapped upright, rippling but never spilling. And behind it was a figure. I moved closer. It looked like me. Same eyes, same mouth, same scar just beneath the jawline I barely remembered getting. But she was smiling, and I wasn't. Then her eyes turned black. I stumbled back, nearly falling into Silas. What is that? I breathed. Lera gripped her dagger again. A mimic,
No,
Eland said, voice tight.
a mirror of what you could become.
She's not just a copy, I whispered. She's a warning. My reflection stepped forward and spoke. Every Luna born to lead must first face what she could become if she breaks. She raised her hand, and mine moved with it, perfectly matched. But if she doesn't break, the mimic said, smiling wider, she burns. I backed away. What do? I asked, voice cracking. Silas didn't speak. He looked at me like he was seeing the real me for the first time. Every edge, every bruise, every truth.
You choose.
He finally said.
Between what?
Eland pointed to the mirror.
Between running from who you are or stepping straight into it.
I looked back at the mimic. She was waiting, calm, certain. I'm scared, I whispered.
That means you're not her.
Silas said gently. I closed my eyes and stepped forward. The moment my fingers touched the surface, the mirror shattered. Not in glass, but in light. A burst of silver energy shot through the room, knocking everyone off their feet. The mimic's face cracked, splintered into thousands of tiny Rhea-shaped pieces, and each one screamed. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing alone. In a new space, a vast field. Moonlight above, grass swaying beneath. No one else, just the sound of wolves howling far in the distance. Then a figure stepped out from the trees. An older woman, dark hair streaked with gray, armor etched with the same marks as the hollow fang book, and on her chest, the moonstone. She didn't smile, she just looked at me. I've been waiting, she said. You took long enough. I stared at her, throat dry. Who are you? I asked. She stepped closer. Her eyes were the same shape as mine.
I'm your mother.
She didn't move fast. She didn't have to. The wind moved around her like it knew her. The grass leaned toward her footsteps like it remembered. I stood frozen in the moonlight, barely breathing. The woman was close now, close enough for me to see the faint scar across her cheek, the way her hands stayed loose by her side, but her posture was straight. Like someone who had worn a crown once, and bled for it. You're lying, I said, though I wasn't sure if I even believed myself. She tilted her head slightly.
Do I look like I have time for that?
I blinked. My legs were shaking. My mouth was dry. My mother died giving birth to me.
That's the story your father told?
Her voice was calm, but not soft. It was the kind of voice that left no room for fantasy.
Because the truth would have made him a traitor.
The sky stretched above us, pale and endless. The howls in the distance had gone quiet. It was just the two of us now. You're Ashira, I asked, voice barely a whisper. She didn't flinch.
Alpha Ashira of the Hollow Fang.
She paused and added quietly,
Your mother.
I stepped back. I needed the space, even if it wasn't real. even if this place was some ancient illusion or memory trapped in the moonstone. My whole life. I couldn't even finish. My throat felt like it was locking shut. I know, her gaze softened, just a little. I watched. That broke something in me. You watched? My voice cracked, loud now, jagged. Where were you when I was drowning in Alpha Thorne's rules? Where were you when they treated me like a name tag and not a person? She didn't flinch.
I was dead.
I stopped breathing.
For 20 years, my soul was trapped beneath the Luna Stone.
She said quietly.
Not by fate, by spell work, blood magic, the same kind that's been hiding the truth from you since the day you were born.
I stared at her. I didn't even know what to ask first. She walked slowly toward the edge of the clearing. A low stone bench sat under a weeping willow that didn't belong to any world I knew. She sat, then looked at me like she expected me to follow. I did. Barely. The moment I sat down, the grass shifted beneath me like a whisper. My hands were still trembling. I didn't bother to hide it. I don't know who I am anymore, I said, more to the wind than to her. She turned her face toward mine.
You're still Rhea, but now you get to decide what that name means.
I stared at her. Why did they destroy you? Her mouth twisted into something sharp.
Because I wanted peace, and that doesn't pay tribute to power.
She told me everything, how she had taken the hollow fang pack and turned it into a sanctuary, hidden deep in the forest. How rogues, banished wolves, and half-bloods had come from all sides, begging for safety. How she had loved one of them. How that rogue had betrayed her to the council.
He was working with Alpha Thorne,
she said, her voice low.
He gave them the entrance to the Hollow Fang's inner sanctum, and when they came, I refused to kneel. And then, they slaughtered everyone, burned the records, took the moonstone, and when I fought back, they sealed me with it, binding my soul into the very thing they buried.
She looked at me with eyes that had cried out long ago.
You were barely 3 months old.
I sat there, fists clenched in my lap. The pain that had lived in my bones for years suddenly had a name. They told me my mother was weak, I said, that she couldn't handle childbirth, that she ran from her duty. Ashira looked down at her hands.
They wanted you to believe that, because the last Luna born to Hollow Fang was the biggest threat they'd ever seen.
I could barely breathe. All this time, I whispered. I've been living in a prison made of lies. She placed a hand over mine.
You were never meant to be anyone's prisoner.
I didn't move, just stared at her touch. It felt warm, solid, real. But they gave you to Thorne, I said. How could they do that?
Because the council saw a child they could raise into a weapon, one they could shape, one they could claim loyalty from, if they twisted her roots just enough.
The sky flickered. The moon dipped lower. I felt the pull of reality trying to snap me back. Ashira looked at me with urgency now.
Listen to me, Rhea. The council is watching. They know you've awakened the Hollow Fang. They'll move fast, and if you're not ready, they'll finish what they started with me.
I gripped her hand. What do I do?
You lead,
she said simply.
You call the wolves who still believe in something better. You take the moonstone, and you awaken the full bloodline within you.
Will I be like you? She smiled then. A real smile. One that touched something buried in me.
No,
she whispered.
You'll be more.
The wind picked up. She stood.
This part of the moonstone won't last forever. When it breaks, I won't be able to come back.
My eyes burned. You're leaving again? She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to mine.
I'm proud of you,
she said.
Even if I wasn't there to raise you, even if I wasn't there to watch you grow, the strength you have, it's yours. You didn't inherit it. You built it.
I closed my eyes. I didn't want this to end. I love you, I whispered. Her fingers brushed my cheek.
I've never stopped.
And then, like smoke carried by wind, she vanished. The field dimmed, the willow faded, and the ground cracked open beneath me. I fell through darkness, through memories not mine, through names of wolves long dead. And I woke up gasping on cold stone. Silas was above me. His hands were on my face, his voice sharp with fear.
Rhea, talk to me.
I blinked up at him. I saw her, I whispered. His brows pulled together.
Who?
My mother. I sat up slowly, every inch of my body aching. The council destroyed her, and they're coming for me next. Just then, a voice echoed from the other chamber, one of the scouts Silas had posted earlier.
Alpha Silas, you need to see this.
We rushed forward and found the walls painted in blood. 5 words. She has awakened the hollow. The first thing I felt when I stood up was the tremor in my legs. Not fear, not shock, just power settling into my bones, like it had been waiting years to come home. I stared at the writing on the wall. She has awakened the hollow. It wasn't paint, it was blood, still wet, still warm. Silas stood close, one hand half raised like he wanted to touch me but didn't know if I'd break or burn.
Did you do this?
He asked. I looked at him. No, I said, but they know. We moved fast. There wasn't time to explain. Not here. Not now. The hollow fang temple shook as we ran out through the stone corridor, the scent of blood trailing behind us. Something had been here. Something that didn't want to destroy, just warn. Like a hand across your throat that lets you breathe. Barely. Outside, the wind hit my skin like a slap. I inhaled deep, and for the first time in weeks, I felt awake. Silas threw his cloak around my shoulders.
You're shaking.
He muttered. I'm not cold, I told him. He glanced at me.
You don't look like the same woman I brought here.
I'm not. We reached the clearing where the others were waiting. Cora, Davin, and a handful of Silas's most loyal wolves. Cora took one look at me and stepped back. Moon above, she breathed.
Rhea, your eyes.
What about them?
They're glowing.
I touched my face. They never did that before. No, she said. But Hollow Fang Lunas did. Silas stepped in front of the group.
We need to move. Now, if the council knows she's awakened, they won't wait.
Davin whistled sharply.
How fast are we talking?
Silas looked me dead in the eyes.
They could already be on their way.
The run back to the base wasn't quiet. The forest held its breath around us, the moonlight slicing through trees like knives. I kept my head down, my senses sharpened. Every sound felt louder, every shift in the wind clearer. I could hear Silas's heartbeat. I could smell the moss on the trees, the burnt scent of old magic on my skin. It was like stepping into someone else's body, but it was mine. And I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. We reached the safe house by dawn. The place looked untouched, peaceful even, but the second we stepped inside, I knew something was off. Cora was the first to draw her blade. Davin sniffed the air.
That's not right.
What is it? I asked.
Lavender.
He muttered.
And copper.
Blood and masking herbs.
Silas said.
They have been here.
I pushed the door open fully, and there they were. Lined up on the walls, 5 of our men. Silent, eyes open, dead. Each with a single silver dagger in the chest. And one word carved across their forearms. Traitor. The world narrowed. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I stared, long and hard. Faces I knew. Wolves I had spoken to. One of them had given me extra bread just 2 days ago. Silas cursed under his breath and turned away.
They were sending a message.
He muttered. No, I said, stepping forward. They were removing threats. I could feel it now, like a tide coming in. The war wasn't coming. It had already started. Quietly, strategically.
They'll try to pin this on you,
Davin said.
They'll say you planned a rebellion.
Let them try, I answered. Because I'm done hiding. We buried the bodies ourselves. There was no time for ceremony, but I whispered something for each of them, not a prayer, just a promise. One by one, I laid a piece of the old Rhea to rest beside them. When I stood, the sky was bleeding orange, and Silas was waiting.
You need to speak to them.
He said, "Who?"
The rogues, the scattered wolves, the ones who don't trust easily, but follow strength when they see it. They've heard whispers about you.
I looked down at my hands. I didn't know if I was strong or just the last one standing. We gathered them that night. Dozens of wolves sitting around the fire, some with scars so deep I could feel them across the flames, some who wouldn't look me in the eye, some who did and dared me to lie. I stood, not tall, not loud, but steady. My name is Rhea. No one moved. I was raised by a man who told me obedience was loyalty. I was taught to smile when I was breaking, to kneel when I wanted to scream. I wore the mark of Luna, but lived like a prisoner. Silence, but not anymore. They leaned in then, slowly, some in disbelief, some in hope. I know the council's tricks, I said. They control packs through fear and tradition. They build thrones from bones and call it honor. Murmurs. They destroyed my mother, lied about my birth, used me to strengthen a tyrant, and now they've murdered 5 of our own to keep me quiet. A growl spread through the circle, deep, slow, rising. I won't be quiet, I won't be obedient, and I won't run. My hands burned, literally. The mark of hollow fang began to glow on my wrist, a crescent moon wrapped in thorns. The wolves gasped. I'm not just the Luna of hollow fang, I said. I am its blood. Its voice. Its fury. Silas watched me from the edge of the firelight. For once, he wasn't shadowed. He stood where I could see him, his expression unreadable. He had brought me here, but this was my fight now. I ended the speech simply. If you want peace, help me fight for it. If you want freedom, stand beside me. If you want revenge, follow me. There was a long pause, and then a howl rose. Low, steady, then another and another, until the forest echoed with wolves who had found something worth fighting for. The moment I turned away from the fire, Cora sprinted toward me from the trees, panting hard.
They're coming,
she said, breath catching.
The council. They're not sending scouts this time.
I stilled. She looked at me, eyes wide.
They're sending a full pack, and the alpha leading them.
She swallowed hard.
Is your mate.
I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at Cora, the forest spinning quietly around us while her words hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't fade.
They're sending a full pack, and the alpha leading them is your mate.
For a second, the old panic clawed at my ribs. But then I caught Silas's eyes through the shadows. I straightened. When? I asked.
Before sunrise,
I said.
They're closing in fast. 30 wolves, at least.
They're not coming to talk,
Davin added, jaw tight. No, I whispered. They're coming to silence. We moved fast. The forest became a blur of black coats and steady breaths. Silas took the lead, calling out low instructions as we darted between trees.
Hide the scent trails.
He said.
Double back. Lead them to the south edge.
Where's Rhea going?
Hora asked. He looked at me.
She's not hiding.
I didn't argue. Let him come. Let him look me in the face and see what he made. The sun broke just as I reached the ridge. Below me, the clearing stretched wide and empty. The tall pines stood like silent guards, their shadows long and cool. Then I saw them. Wolves, moving in perfect formation. Big, powerful, polished. Their coats gleamed. Their eyes searched. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. And then, him. Alpha Thorne. He stood out like a jagged blade among polished silver. His frame was taller than I remembered. Shoulders squared, black uniform sharp, gold crest of the council stitched over his heart. My mark still burned on his wrist. So did his on mine. But that connection felt like a locked room I'd burned to the ground. He saw me. Of course he did. Our eyes met across the clearing, and something flickered in him. Recognition, regret, number just calculation. Like he was weighing whether to speak or to destroy. He didn't move, neither did I. Finally, he stepped forward.
Rhea.
His voice hadn't changed, still smooth, still cold. I didn't answer.
You left the pack.
He said. You stole sacred texts. You aligned yourself with traitors. I tilted my head. And you married a girl barely out of her teens, broke her down, isolated her, and paraded her like a trophy. Silence. His jaw worked.
You broke the bond.
No, I said. You did. He took a step closer.
We were mated by the moon. You don't just leave that.
I stayed still. The moon doesn't choose cruelty. He glanced at the mark on my wrist, the one that had started glowing since Hollow Fang woke up in me.
You were nothing.
He said quietly.
Before me.
I smiled, just a little. And now, without you, I'm everything. The trees behind me shifted. Silas stepped out, flanked by Davin and Cora. Dozens of rogues emerged, surrounding me in a quiet, fierce circle. Not afraid, not angry, ready. Thorne's eyes slid to Silas. Of course they'd recognize each other. 2 alphas, 2 predators, 1 throne between them.
Silas Frost.
Thorne said slowly.
Didn't think you had it in you. Hiding behind Aluna's skirts now?
Silas smirked.
Funny. I was just about to ask if you still hide behind council laws.
The tension snapped tight. I stepped between them. Enough. You're not here for diplomacy, I said. So say what you came to say. Thorne's gaze burned into mine.
By order of the council, you are hereby declared rogue, an enemy of the realm. You are to be captured or destroyed. Those who harbor you will suffer the same fate.
He turned slightly toward the rogues.
Lay down your weapons. Walk away. I'll consider mercy.
No one moved. Thorne's lip curled.
She's just a broken mate. A cursed Luna clinging to the past.
Cora stepped up, chin high.
You don't get to define her anymore.
You never did.
Silas added. Something cracked inside me then, not in pain, in purpose. You want me? I said to Thorne. Then come take me, but you better bring more than 30 wolves and a badge. He studied me, carefully.
You're serious about this?
As death, I whispered. For the first time, his face shifted. The calm faded. He was losing control. I'd never seen that before, and it felt like victory. But then he did something I didn't expect. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small glass vial. Clear, sparkling. He held it up.
I wouldn't do this,
he said.
Unless you forced me.
What is it?
Silas asked sharply. But I already knew. I felt it, in my bones, in my soul. Moonshade, I breathed. Silas stiffened.
That's forbidden.
Thorne's voice was like ice.
It severs bonds permanently and destroy anyone who resists.
I stared at the vial, my breath slowed. You'd destroy your own mate? I asked. He stared right back.
No,
he said.
I'll just make sure you can never belong to anyone else.
Before I could speak, he crushed the vial in his hand. The light flashed white. A sound like the earth cracking split through the clearing. And then, nothing. Just black. Something was burning. I didn't open my eyes at first. I couldn't tell where I was or what had happened. Only that the ground felt wrong, too hard, too cold, too still. Then came the ache, not sharp, not even loud. It was quiet, deep, like a missing limb, a hollowness where something had once lived inside me and now didn't. I blinked slowly. The sky above me was gray and cracked with streaks of fading light. Trees swayed in silence, their leaves hanging as if even they weren't sure what to do next. Then I felt it, my mark, gone.
Rhea.
A voice pulled me back. I turned my head, slowly. Silas was crouched beside me, his face pale, eyes wild with worry.
Hey, look at me. Stay with me.
My lips were dry. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a whisper. "Where is he?"
Gone.
Silas said, jaw clenched.
The moment that flash hit, he pulled back. Took the wolves with him. Coward.
I tried to sit up. A rush of dizziness hit me like a wave. My body wasn't mine. It felt like a stranger's. Every bone humming with something I couldn't name. Cora appeared behind him, her hands steady, her expression serious.
You need to rest.
"No," I rasped. "I need answers." They helped me sit against a tree. The bark was rough, grounding. I stared down at my wrist. The mark Thorne left behind was nothing but a faint scar now. The color had drained. The link severed. And yet, I wasn't grieving. There were no tears. Just this strange pressure behind my ribs. Like something locked inside me was stirring, trying to stretch for the first time. "I should feel different," I whispered. "Lighter, or broken." Silas leaned closer.
You don't feel broken?
I met his eyes. "No, I feel like I can finally breathe." Cora gave a quiet smile.
Then maybe that's not the end of a bond.
Maybe it's the start of something else. We made it back to the hideout by nightfall. The others were waiting, eyes filled with questions they didn't dare ask out loud. Davin hovered near me like a watchdog, refusing to even blink unless I was in his line of sight. Cora brewed something hot. I didn't drink it. I just sat, fingers tracing the scar on my wrist again and again. It was still warm. That shouldn't be possible. Later that night, I found Silas alone near the edge of camp. He stood facing the trees, one hand resting on the old sword strapped across his back. The moonlight bathed him in silver. He looked carved out of stormlight and shadow. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked. He turned slightly, eyes softening when he saw me.
I don't sleep much these days.
I walked over, stopping beside him. "You knew he'd do it, didn't you?" Silas didn't answer at first.
I knew Thorne was desperate, but I didn't think he'd go that far.
"I did," I said quietly. "He'd rather destroy me than see me free." For a while, we didn't speak, just stood side by side, letting the silence say the things we couldn't. Finally, I turned toward him. "Can I ask you something?" He looked over.
Anything.
"What do you see when you look at me now, after all this?" His jaw worked, like he wasn't sure if he wanted to answer honestly, but he did.
I see a woman who walked through fire and didn't let it own her. I see strength, anger, sadness, but mostly, I see someone who scares the hell out of the man who used to control her.
I exhaled slowly. "You're not scared of me?"
No,
he said, his voice deep and sure.
I'm scared for you.
That night, I dreamed. But it wasn't just a dream. It was a memory and a warning. I was standing in the middle of a field, tall grass brushing my legs. The sky above me was pulsing with light, shifting between silver and red. And there she was, the ancient wolf, the one who had haunted my visions before. She stepped forward, golden eyes burning with something I couldn't name.
You are unbound,
she said. I couldn't speak.
You are no longer claimed by moon or mate. What you carry now is older than both.
She circled me slowly.
But freedom comes with a price.
What price? I whispered. Her eyes met mine.
Everything.
I woke up gasping. Silas was there, already awake, like he'd felt it too. I saw her again, I whispered. He stared at me.
The she-wolf?
I nodded slowly. She said, I'm unbound. I don't belong to the moon anymore. Silas didn't move.
You think she's telling the truth?
I think, I said. Something inside me is shifting. As if to prove me right, the ground rumbled beneath us. Just a tremor, quick, faint. But every wolf in the camp went still. Then a howl echoed from the east. Not from our wolves, not even from Thorne's pack. Silas rose to his feet, shoulders tense.
That wasn't a warning.
He said. I stood beside him. What was it then? His eyes locked onto mine.
That was a summoning.
A second howl broke through the trees. Louder, deeper, laced with a magic I'd never felt before. And this time, it was calling my name. The second howl came like a thread wrapped around my spine, pulling me forward. I didn't wait, didn't stop to pack or explain. I just moved. Bare feet against the forest floor, leaves snapping beneath me, cold wind slipping past my skin like whispers I couldn't shake. Silas shouted after me.
Rhea, wait! You don't know what's out there.
I kept going. The trees thinned, shadows pulling away from my path like they knew I didn't belong to them anymore. I wasn't running blindly. The pull inside me was precise, magnetic, like something had snapped loose the moment Thorne severed the bond. Like the part of me that had always been quiet was finally wide awake. Silas caught up, breathing hard, jaw clenched.
Would you please stop doing this disappearing act?
I didn't look at him. It's calling me,
Yeah, I got that part.
he muttered.
Any chance we could talk about the whole what exactly is calling you situation?
I stopped dead, turned toward him. I don't know, he blinked.
You don't know?
I stepped closer, voice low. Silas, I felt it. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even from a living wolf. His brow furrowed.
Then what the hell was it?
A memory, I said softly, but alive. We reached a clearing I'd never seen before, not on any maps, not even in the pack's oldest records. It was circular, rimmed with stone that didn't look like it belonged in this time. Old symbols were etched into the dirt, deep and worn, faded but still humming, like they remembered what they were made for. The howl had stopped, but its echo still clung to the trees. I stepped inside. Silas stayed back.
Something's not right here.
I know, I said. That's why I have to go further. The moment my feet touched the center of the circle, everything changed. Light burst beneath me, not fire, not magic. Memory, a flood of voices, images, wolves I'd never seen, wars I'd never fought. And at the center of it all, a woman, wrapped in silver fur, eyes like molten gold, standing tall against a storm. Her voice was quiet, but it boomed through every part of me.
You have been claimed by no one, and so you may claim all.
My knees buckled. Silas caught me before I hit the ground.
Rhea, what's happening?
My fingers gripped his arm, eyes wild. She's not dead, I whispered. She's waiting. That night, I didn't return to camp. Silas stayed with me, pacing like a caged animal.
You want to tell me what that was?
She's not just a myth, I said. The first Luna, the one who broke the bond to the moon. She was real. He ran a hand through his hair.
Great, cool. So now you're seeing wolf ghosts in magic circles.
I laughed under my breath. She wasn't a ghost. She was what we become when the world tries to unmake us. Silas stared at me for a beat. Then quietly,
Is that what you're becoming?
I met his eyes. I don't know. Morning came with fog, and a message. A runner from Thorne's camp showed up before sunrise, covered in bruises, barely breathing, trembling like he'd seen death.
Alpha Thorne is summoning the Luna, alone.
Silas growled,
You think we're going to let her walk into his trap?
but I was already reaching for my boots. I'll go.
Rhea, no.
I'm not afraid of him anymore. The meeting place was another clearing, farther north. Thorne stood in the center, back to me. I stopped at the edge. You sent for me, I said. He turned slowly, eyes rimmed red. His voice was soft, almost too soft.
I didn't think you'd come.
You wanted a Luna, I said. Now you've got one. His laugh cracked.
You think because you've got some ancient wolf whispering in your head, you're suddenly more than what I made you?
I was never what you made me. Thorne stepped forward, every inch of him radiating control barely held in place.
Rhea, Come back. I'll fix this. I'll mark you again. We'll be stronger.
I stared, and then I smiled. You still don't get it. He frowned.
Get what?
You can't mark what doesn't belong. He lunged, but I was faster. The moment his hand touched my arm, something inside me lit up. A force that wasn't the moon, wasn't from any alpha. It burned through me, fierce and wild. Thorne recoiled like he'd touched lightning.
What are you?
I stepped forward slowly. I don't have to answer that anymore. He stumbled back.
I'll burn your camp. I'll drag your rogue to the pit. I'll erase everything that touched you.
I looked him dead in the eyes. Then I'll rise from the ashes. He didn't get the last word. I turned and walked away. Silas was waiting at the edge of the trees, arms crossed, face unreadable. He didn't speak right away. Finally, he said,
You're changing.
I know. He tilted his head, voice lower now.
Should I be worried?
I looked out into the woods where the clearing had pulsed with light. I think we should all be. That night, the moon didn't rise. Not behind clouds, not late. It simply never came. And somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. Not for the alpha, not even for the Luna. They howled for me. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared. I'd moved past fear days ago. It was something else. The absence of the moon wasn't just a weird trick of the sky. It felt like a page had been torn from a book we weren't allowed to read anymore. The wolves didn't shift. The usual howls that echoed through the forest every night, silent. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. Silas sat by the fire across from me, eyes on the flames. He hadn't spoken since we got back from Thorne's meeting, but I could feel the questions piling up inside him. Finally, he looked up.
Do you feel different now?
I hesitated, then said, Not different. Just like I'm not borrowing power anymore, like it finally came home. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees.
That's terrifying.
Is it?
You used to flinch when people raised their voices at you.
He said.
Now you stare down an alpha like he's a child trying to throw a tantrum.
I gave a soft laugh. Yeah, well, you spend enough time being told you're nothing, and eventually you start listening to something louder. By sunrise, our camp was buzzing. Word had spread, not just about the moon being missing, but about me, about what happened in the clearing, about the old voice that spoke through me. Wolves from nearby rogue circles started arriving in 2s and 3s, quiet and careful, looking at me like I was some kind of legend walking around in a borrowed body. A younger girl, maybe 17, stood near the edge of the camp. She didn't say a word, just kept her hand pressed to her chest like something inside her was breaking open. I walked over gently. What's your name? She blinked up at me. Mael. Did you lose someone? She shook her head. No, I felt invisible for a long time. But when they said a Luna stood against her alpha and didn't flinch, she looked like she might fall apart just saying it. I took her hand. You're not invisible now. You never were. By noon, the camp wasn't just buzzing, it was boiling. Scouts came in with news. Thorne's army had started moving. But they weren't heading for our hideout. They were going for the Moonridge Circle, a neutral ground held by the old council. If he burned it, the wolves would have no order, no diplomacy, only war. I stared at the map spread out on the old wooden table, tracing his path with my finger. Silas leaned over my shoulder.
He's baiting you.
Of course he is.
You're going?
I have to, he sighed.
You sure you're not walking right into his hands?
I looked up at him. Even if I am, I'm not going alone this time. We left before sunset. There were 20 of us, rogues, outcasts, forgotten warriors who no longer cared about titles. We weren't an army. We were something stranger, something freer. Before we moved, I stood in the middle of them. I could feel their eyes on me, expecting me to lead, to say something strong. But all I could do was tell the truth. I'm not here because I think I'm powerful, I said. I'm here because no one else stood up when they took our mates, broke our bonds, burned down our homes, and said it was for the good of the pack. I'm done pretending that's normal. I'm done playing by their rules. A few heads bowed. Some just stared, but I saw it. Hope flickering again, like fire learning how to be wild. We reached the edge of Moonridge just after dark. The place was already burning. Smoke curled into the sky like twisted ribbon, and wolves tore into each other across the clearing. There were no sides anymore, just chaos. I moved fast, shifting halfway, claws out, legs moving without thought. A soldier from Thorne's pack charged at me with wild eyes and blood on his muzzle. I ducked his attack, slashed low, sent him crashing into the dirt. Another one came from behind. Silas took him down before I had to turn.
You good?
He shouted. I didn't answer. I was already running. The council chambers were at the center, half stone, half silverwood, older than any pack. It was where peace used to live. Now the doors were shattered, and the symbol of the moon carved into the floor was scorched. Inside, Thorne stood surrounded by his enforcers, waiting. He looked unhinged, not angry, not smug, wild.
Rhea,
He said like a prayer.
you made it.
I stepped inside, slow and sure. I always show up for endings. He walked toward me, face drawn, hands twitching like he couldn't decide whether to hold me or kill me.
You did this.
He whispered.
You broke the balance.
No, I said calmly. You did that the moment you used your title like a weapon. He raised his hand, and behind him, 2 enforcers shifted and lunged. I moved faster. Time didn't slow. I just stopped letting it get in the way. I dropped the first one with a hit to the ribs, ducked under the second, grabbed his arm, and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack stone. Silas was right behind me, fending off 3 more. And then, everything went silent. The old Luna voice inside me came again. But it wasn't a whisper now. It roared. And when I opened my mouth, I spoke with it. Not just from my throat, but from something deeper. Something old. This ends tonight. Thorne's enforcers froze, like their bodies recognized a higher call. Even Thorne looked stunned.
You're not Luna.
He rasped.
You're something else.
I took a step forward. No, I said softly. I'm what comes after a Luna survives everything meant to destroy her. He tried to strike me then, but something in the circle of stone cracked beneath us. A column of light surged through the floor, splitting the room in 2. And from that light, a figure stepped out. Not fully solid, not alive, not dead. The first Luna. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment it felt like standing at the edge of the beginning of the world. Her voice wrapped around us like truth that couldn't be denied.
This war ends when the Luna rises.
And then, she vanished. Thorne was shaking.
No, she was mine. I built this world. I made you.
I stared straight into him. You used me, and now you answer to me. He ran, coward, but not far. Silas caught him before he made it out of the chamber, slammed him to the ground. Looked at me, waiting. I didn't give the order, because something else was already coming. A howl in the distance. Low, strange, not wolf, not rogue. Something else, something waking. Something we had all forgotten. The ground trembled beneath us. The walls cracked again. And from deep beneath the council's ruins came a sound none of us could explain. Not beast, not man, but something ancient. Waiting, I barely breathed. The stone beneath us trembled again, but it wasn't from Thorne. It wasn't from Silas or the soldiers, or even the battle dying outside the ruins. It came from below, from something we'd buried so deep, we'd convinced ourselves it didn't exist. Thorne was still on the ground, panting, face smudged with ash, eyes wild. Silas held him down, one knee pressed against his back, but even he seemed distracted by the rumble in the earth.
What is that?
he muttered. I looked toward the floor. The cracked moon symbol was glowing faintly, like it was trying to speak without words. I think it's been waiting, I said.
For what?
Silas asked. For a Luna who remembered. And just like that, the stone gave way. The floor split down the center. Dust spiraled up, swallowing the room in silver fog. Everyone backed away as a staircase revealed itself, carved from obsidian and laced with ancient markings. Symbols I didn't recognize but somehow felt. I should have been afraid. I wasn't. My feet moved on their own. I stepped over the broken threshold and descended, the sound of my bare soles echoing off the cold stone walls. Silas followed, quiet but alert. We didn't say a word. It felt wrong to speak in a place that hadn't heard a voice in centuries. We reached the bottom and found a wide chamber lit by a soft, eerie glow coming from the walls themselves, like the stone was alive with memory. And in the center stood a sarcophagus, not made of stone, but bone. White and jagged, stitched together with iron rings, covered in claw marks. There were carvings on it, old ones, worn but clear. Silas stepped forward, brushing dust from the surface.
This isn't a grave.
No, I whispered. It's a prison. I felt it. Whoever or whatever was inside wasn't dead, just waiting. Then the room started to whisper, not with words, with feelings, visions. A rush of images hit me, faces, flames, forests devoured by blood, howls that shattered mountains, a woman running through night with her hands soaked in silver, a man with wolf eyes holding the sun like it belonged to him, packs bowing, moons turning red. I stumbled. Silas caught me.
Rhea, what is it?
I saw them, the ones before us, the first Luna, the first Alpha, the betrayal.
The what?
I turned slowly toward the sarcophagus. They made a deal with something older than wolves, to protect their kind, but the price was blood. Silas frowned.
Whose?
Every Luna born after them. My hands shook as I reached out to the sarcophagus. Something pulled at me, not physically, deeper than that. A calling, like the one I'd heard the night the moon vanished.
You're not going to open that, right?
Silas asked carefully. I didn't answer. My fingertips hovered just above the surface. The markings glowed beneath my skin. And then, it spoke.
You carry her name.
I staggered back. Silas moved in front of me.
What the hell was that?
The voice echoed again, low and ancient, male, powerful.
You carry the name of the Luna who betrayed me.
Who are you? I asked, my voice cracking.
The beginning.
It said.
The first Alpha. The one she caged. The one she feared. The one she loved.
Silas whispered.
You think it's him? The first Alpha?
No, I said. It's older than that. The chamber trembled again. I pressed my palm against the bone. What do you want?
To be free.
The voice said, softer now.
And to take back what was mine.
Which is?
You.
My knees almost gave out. What?
You carry her blood, her defiance, her flame. She stole from me. Now you burn with her memory. Come closer, Luna. Let me show you who you are.
Silas yanked me back.
Don't!
But I couldn't stop. I stepped closer, and suddenly I was no longer in the chamber. I stood in a forest wrapped in silver leaves. A woman stood across from me, tall and regal. Her hair braided with bones, her body cloaked in light and sorrow. She looked just like me, but older, tired. She turned slowly.
I failed,
she said softly.
I chose love over duty, and we paid.
You're the first Luna, I whispered. She gave a sad smile.
I was, until I locked away the one who gave us strength, until I lied to every Luna after me, including you.
Why?
Because he became too strong, too wild. He wanted to reshape the world for us, but it meant wiping out everything. he would have bled the earth dry to make the pack eternal.
Her voice cracked.
So I trapped him, in bone and silence. But even now, he waits. He watches through your eyes.
I swallowed. Is he evil? She stepped closer.
No, he's in love.
With me?
With me, through you.
I gasped and stumbled back into the chamber. Silas caught me again.
What did you see?
I looked at the sarcophagus, trembling. I think he doesn't want power.
What then?
He wants me to love him. Silas's jaw clenched.
He's manipulating you.
I know, I whispered, but it doesn't feel like a trick. It feels like I've known him longer than I've known myself. He grabbed my arm gently.
Rhea, whatever's in there, it doesn't love. It consumes. You can't give yourself to it.
I met his eyes, and for a second, all I could think about was that night in the tent. The way his fingers brushed my jaw. The way he held me like I mattered. You think I'm not strong enough to resist it? I asked.
No.
He said.
I think you're strong enough to believe you can save him. And that's worse.
Suddenly, the chamber doors slammed shut above, and the room turned cold. The sarcophagus groaned as the iron rings around it started to break, one by one.
You woke him.
Silas whispered. No, I said, breath shaky. He's been waking since the moment I stopped being afraid. The last ring cracked. Bone shifted. A hand emerged, dark-skinned, clawed, glowing with ancient scars. And then, his face, not beast, not man, both. He opened his eyes, gold burning with madness and memory, and he smiled at me.
My Luna,
He said.
I've been waiting a long time.
Silas pulled me behind him, but it was too late. The first alpha had returned, and he remembered everything we were never supposed to know. I should have run. I should have turned my back, grabbed Silas, and climbed out of that cursed chamber before the first alpha rose completely. Before he stood upright, taller than any man I'd ever seen, skin wrapped in ancient power, eyes glowing with the memory of a world that had forgotten him. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Something about him, about the way he looked at me like I wasn't just a Luna, but his Luna, pinned me in place.
You remember me?
He said, voice low and rich, like a song that's been echoing too long in the dark.
Even if you don't know it yet.
Silas stepped forward.
Back off.
The alpha didn't even glance at him. His focus was fixed on me, as if Silas didn't matter, as if no one else ever had. My name is Rhea, I said, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. The alpha smiled.
I know.
How? He stepped closer. The floor creaked beneath him.
Because your soul has carried the same flame for centuries, the same defiance, the same fire she used to destroy me.
I flinched. She didn't destroy you. She saved everyone else from you. His lips twitched, but it wasn't anger. It was amusement.
She saved them from power, from truth, and in return you all lost yourselves, forgotten what it means to be wolf. You live by laws written in fear, not instinct. That was never our way.
Silas reached for his blade. Don't, I whispered.
Rhea, you don't know what he is.
Yes, I said. I do. The alpha extended a hand toward me. His palm was marked with something old, an etching like a burn, like lightning had branded him in a perfect circle. It looked just like the scar on my wrist, the one I was born with and never understood.
You carry me inside you,
He said softly.
not in flesh, in memory, in bond.
What do you want from me? He looked almost sad.
What I always wanted, for my Luna to come back to me.
I'm not her. He took another step, eyes darkening.
Aren't you?
Silas stepped between us again.
You touch her, and I'll bury you right back in that bone box.
This time, the alpha looked at him, slowly, like he'd just noticed him. His voice dropped, cold and sharp.
You're the one who follows her like a shadow.
Silas didn't blink.
I'm the one who loves her.
Something shifted in the alpha's eyes. A storm, not jealousy, not rage, possession.
Then I will make you bleed first.
Before I could say a word, Silas leapt. Steel met magic. The two of them clashed like lightning and thunder, fast, brutal, relentless. The chamber trembled as their power collided. Silas moved like smoke, sharp and silent, but the alpha barely flinched under his strikes. He was built of ancient strength, muscle layered with something that looked like stone, like time had carved his body into a weapon. I wanted to scream, to pull Silas back, but I couldn't interrupt them, not now. Then the alpha caught him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. I ran, straight at him. Let him go! My voice echoed across the stone. The alpha stilled. Slowly, he turned toward me, and his grip loosened. Silas dropped, coughing, but alive.
You would choose him?
The alpha asked.
A shadow over a king?
I choose me, I snapped. And you don't get to claim me just because your Luna died in my skin. He studied me, and for the first time, he looked unsure. I don't want your bond, I said. I don't want your power, but I want answers. He tilted his head.
What kind?
Why did she lock you away? His gaze darkened.
Because I gave her everything, and she feared it.
Why?
Because love made her strong, and that scared her more than anything else.
I looked at him for a long time, and something inside me cracked. Because deep down, I felt it too. That old pull, that strange ache that started the day I touched that mark on my wrist, and wondered why it felt like someone else's loss lived there too. I took a step closer. Silas grabbed my hand.
Don't.
I have to, I whispered. I walked up to the alpha, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his skin. His scars looked ancient, but his eyes, those golden eyes, were heartbreakingly alive. Tell me your name, I said. He blinked, slowly, then he whispered.
Orin?
Orin, the first alpha. The one who burned kingdoms for the woman he loved. The one who was caged for it. I didn't touch him, but I didn't step away either. And for the first time since I came to this cursed mountain, I understood something. This wasn't about right or wrong. It was about truth. And mine was messy, bleeding at the edges, torn between the man who fought beside me and the one who waited centuries to find me. Orin stepped even closer.
If I hurt you, it was never my intention,
he said.
I waited too long. I remember too much. But I never stopped seeing you in every moon.
You don't love me, I whispered. You love her. He looked me dead in the eyes.
She lives in you. You carry her grief, her voice, her fury. You are the echo she left behind. And I would burn again for that echo.
Behind us, the chamber doors creaked. A rush of footsteps echoed above. The elders were coming, and they weren't coming to talk.
They're here to kill him.
Silas said.
And maybe you?
Orin turned toward the sound, his fingers curling into fists.
Then let them come.
No, I said. I'm done choosing between men with swords. This ends with me. They stared at me like I'd grown a second head, but I meant it. I turned toward the stairwell. I could already see the shadows of the elders moving, weapons drawn, spells in hand. I raised my voice. Stand down, I called out. You touch him, and I walk away from all of you, Luna or not. The shadows paused. I walked to the center of the room and stood between Orin and the exit. And for the first time, I felt it, my power. Not from him, not from them, from me. I am Rhea, I said loudly. Luna by birth, by fire, by choice. And if any of you want to silence the past, then you'll have to silence me first. The silence was loud. Then a single voice broke through.
She carries the bond.
Someone whispered. Another one followed.
She has the mark.
And then they bowed. Every last one of them, even Silas, even Oren. But just as that moment settled, a crack exploded from the ceiling, and a howl unlike anything I'd ever heard shook the world above. The mountain groaned, and something else awoke in the dark. I spun around as the chamber walls split wide, and from the shadows, Frida walked in, alive, and glowing with the same silver fire I saw in my dreams. Frida stood in front of me like the ghost of every nightmare I'd buried. Her face hadn't aged a day. Same stormy eyes, same proud jawline, same cruel smirk I once mistook for kindness. But this time, her presence didn't make me feel small. It made me feel awake. "I watched you bleed for this," she said, stepping forward. Her boots didn't make a sound against the ancient stone, like even the floor dared not cross her. "You were dead," I whispered. But even as the words left my mouth, they felt hollow. Dead is a matter of perspective. Her gaze swept over Silas, then paused on Oren. Some of us never really rest. Some of us come back, angrier. My body stayed rooted in place, but my fingers clenched at my sides. "You betrayed me. You let Thorne take me. You vanished, and I blame myself for not stopping you." Frida laughed softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You still don't get it. I chose to leave. I let Thorne have you. And I didn't vanish. I evolved." Oren stepped forward.
This is madness. I buried your sister with my own hands.
"Did you?" Her voice cut through the air. "Or did you just bury what you feared?" He froze. I could feel something crack in his stare. For the first time since we awakened him, he looked haunted.
She was my Luna's sister.
He said finally, his voice gravel and regret.
You were like family to us.
"I was nothing to you." Frida's voice trembled now, but not with sorrow, with fury. "You loved her, not me. You let the elders erase me from every scroll, every memory. I became dust while you roared for a kingdom." Frida turned her eyes to me again, softening just enough to unsettle me. "But you, Rhea, you were different. You carried her spark. You carried mine." She pulled something from her coat, a silver vial glowing faintly. "My blood." "How do you have that?" I asked, my voice cracking with a mix of fear and fury. Silas moved closer, protective instinct in his posture, but Frida only laughed. "You left traces behind in every place you stepped into. That abandoned cottage in the woods? That was mine. You thought it was safety. It was a trap." My head spun. All the moments I thought were mine, were they orchestrated by her? She opened the vial and spilled it onto the runes carved into the stone. The chamber trembled. Oren growled.
Stop it. You have no idea what you're unlocking.
"Oh, but I do," Frida said. "I've been preparing for this moment for decades." The symbols on the floor lit up like wildfire. The stone cracked, and beneath it, something moved. A shadow stretched out from the break, like liquid smoke crawling toward me. The ground pulsed beneath my boots. "You brought something here," I whispered. Frida smiled like she was welcoming an old friend. "I brought him, the one they buried before even Oren's time, the creature the first elders feared, the one they chained beneath this mountain." The stone cracked wider. A low growl echoed, not from any throat I'd ever heard. It was old, angry, hungry. I stepped forward. "Frida, whatever you think you're doing, this isn't power. This is suicide." Her smirk turned cold. "Oh, Rhea, you still think this is about power?" She spread her arms, face lit with rage and pride. "This is about vengeance. You all forgot me. You crowned others, but I'm the one who bled for this kingdom first." The mountain rumbled again, and dust rained down from above. Oren shielded Silas and me, but it was no use. The stone beneath us split wide open. A massive clawed hand burst through the ground, blackened, cracked, steaming. And then, a second hand. Whatever it was crawling up from the abyss, and it wasn't alone. Frida stepped back, watching with reverence. This is justice, my justice. Oren shouted.
You're waking the unforgiven.
Silas cursed, trying to pull me away, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Because just before the creature rose, it looked at me. Through the cracks, through the chaos, it locked eyes with mine. And I recognized it. Not from this life, but another. A memory buried beneath every scar I'd ever worn. It knew me, and worse, I knew it. The past wasn't just haunting us now. It was clawing its way into the present. The thing that crawled out of the earth didn't look like any beast I'd ever seen. Not a wolf, not a man. It was something forged out of nightmares and bone-deep vengeance. Smoke poured from its body like it had been born from fire, but its eyes were ancient. Knowing, they searched the room like they'd seen it all once before. Then they stopped. On me. Oren reached for his blade.
Get behind me.
I didn't move. Because that thing, it knew me. Not just recognized, knew. The way someone remembers a wound they never speak of again. Frida whispered something under her breath. A chant, soft but sharp. The runes on the ground began to shift. They twisted and glowed like they were alive. The creature let out a low growl that rumbled in my bones. Silas grabbed my hand.
We're leaving. Now.
But I couldn't turn away. Not yet. Wait, I said, voice rough. I need to hear it. I need to feel it.
You're not listening to this thing.
Oren barked.
It's not a memory, Rhea. It's a curse.
Frida looked smug. She stood beside the creature like a proud artist beside her masterpiece. You still don't get it. You think this is the monster, but she's the reason he exists. Silas stared at her.
What are you saying?
Frida stepped forward, eyes locked with mine. Rhea created him. Silas stiffened.
That's not possible.
I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Frida laughed. But there was no humor in it. You think your Luna power just appeared? You think your connection to the moon is some blessing passed down? No, Rhea. It's a curse you forged in another life. When you loved him, before Oren, before the wars, when you chose a path no Luna was meant to take. The creature took a step forward. The stone cracked beneath its feet. You bonded with darkness, Frida whispered. And now it's come home. I turned to Oren. Is any of this true? He didn't answer right away, his jaw clenched, eyes heavy.
She wasn't always my Luna,
he admitted.
She was someone else first, someone the elders erased.
My pulse raced. You knew?
I didn't want to believe it, but I see it now. The mark on your back, the dreams, the way the moon bends around you. You're not just a Luna, Rhea. You're the original.
My knees buckled. Silas caught me before I fell. Frida tilted her head. It all makes sense now, doesn't it? Why, I asked. Why would I ever create something like him? The creature let out a sound that wasn't quite a growl, wasn't quite a word, but it tugged at the edge of memory like a forgotten lullaby. My throat went dry. You didn't create him, Frida said. You loved him. And when they took him from you, when they chained him beneath this mountain, you made a vow. You would burn the world if it meant freeing him. My mind spun. Oren stepped forward.
She's lying.
I don't think she is, I whispered. Silas gripped my arm tighter.
Rhea, look at me. I don't care who you were then. I care who you are now.
My chest rose with each breath, but nothing made sense anymore. Was I really the one who started all of this? Did I once trade light for darkness? Frida turned back to the beast. She's awake now. What are you waiting for? The creature didn't move. It looked at me again, this time with sadness.
Rhea,
Silas said gently.
If this thing wants you, we fight. But if you want to end this, you have to face it.
I took a shaky step toward it. The heat radiating off its body didn't burn. It recognized me. And deep inside, something old and aching stirred. I remembered a hand like this, clawless then, brushing my cheek. I remembered a voice, low and steady, promising to find me again. I'd loved him, long ago, before I ever wore the mark of a Luna. And now, he'd returned. But what was he now? I'm not who I was, I whispered. A rumble echoed in the chamber. The beast lowered its head. I buried her, I said. I buried the girl who made that promise. The creature didn't argue, it simply stared. Frida's face twisted. You're stronger together. The two of you could erase every pack, every elder, every alpha who ever spat on your name. No, I said, louder now. You don't get to use my past to justify your rage. She stormed toward me. I built this. I waited in shadows for decades for you to wake up. And I finally have, I said, stepping away from her. The beast snarled, not at me, at her. Frida stopped mid-step. It lunged, fast, sharp, precise. She screamed. The blade of its claw pierced the edge of her coat, sending her spinning into the rune wall. The stones shattered. Energy spilled from the runes like water from a broken dam. The walls shook. Aaron raised his arms.
It's collapsing.
Silas grabbed my hand.
We have to go.
But I couldn't leave the creature. Not yet. I turned back. What's your name? It blinked. And for the first time, it spoke. Not in a roar, not in some ancient growl. Just one word. Gravel soft. Heavy as the moon. Kyle. My breath caught. That name. It wasn't from this world. It was from mine. He looked at me, and in that single moment, I remembered everything. Who I was, who he had been, and what we did together that led to this curse. The mountain split again, wider. We didn't have time.
Rhea!
Silas shouted, yanking me back. The last thing I saw was Kale standing in the firelight, his body disappearing into the crumbling ruins. But not gone. Never gone. Just waiting. Silas didn't speak a word as we raced through the forest. The branches scratched at our arms, but neither of us flinched. My thoughts were louder than the wind howling through the trees. Kyle, the name pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. I glanced at Silas, his jaw locked, his grip steady on my wrist. He hadn't let go since we fled the ruins. Say something, I whispered. He didn't stop running.
I don't know what to say.
Then stop pretending like you didn't hear him.
I did hear him. That's the problem.
The moonlight spilled over us in streaks, catching the edge of his cheekbone, the little scar near his brow. He was beautiful even when angry. Or maybe especially then. I didn't ask to remember him, I said. I didn't even know he existed until tonight. Silas slowed, finally stopped. He turned to face me.
But now you do.
I held his gaze. He's not who I want. Silas's brows lowered.
Then why did you look at him like that?
I didn't answer. Couldn't, because he was right. There was a pull, an ache in my bones that Kyle had touched. A tether older than anything I'd ever felt. But love wasn't just memory, it was choice. And I had already chosen. I don't want Kyle, I said again, quieter this time. I want you. Silas's throat bobbed.
Even if he's part of your soul?
I stepped closer, placed my hand on his chest. You're part of my life. That's stronger. He looked at me for a long second.
I just needed to hear it.
I know, I said. We stood there, catching our breath, until the silence cracked. A howl, but it wasn't a warning, it was war. Oren, I turned toward the sound. The pack.
They're under attack.
Silas muttered.
That's west of the border.
We ran, faster than before. No hesitation now. By the time we reached the western ridge, smoke curled into the sky. Fires lit the trees like they were kindling. And in the clearing just beyond the meadow, wolves clashed in brutal chaos. Rogues, Frida's army, some shifted mid-run, their limbs contorting as their jaws opened in battle cries. Oren's warriors fought back, but they were outnumbered. I didn't hesitate. My wolf surged forward, and in a blink, my bones cracked and reformed. The world sharpened, colors more vivid, scents sharper, sounds clearer than glass shattering. I dove into the fight. Silas shifted beside me, and together we carved through the enemy like a windstorm, with claws. But something was wrong. They didn't just come to fight. They came to end us. One of the rogues lunged, snapping at my shoulder. I twisted, biting down on its throat before it could land. Then I saw him. Kale. Not fighting, watching. Standing just beyond the flames, half shadowed by smoke and moonlight. I shifted back into human form, breath ragged, sweat on my neck. My clothes hung in tatters, and blood dripped from a cut near my temple. He walked toward me, slow and steady, calm in a storm.
You called me,
He said. I didn't mean to.
but you did.
His voice was smoke and stone.
You remembered.
That doesn't mean I belong to you. He stopped. His eyes burned like two dying suns.
You once said we were two sides of the same scar.
Maybe we were, I said, but scars fade. He looked at the pack, at the wolves still fighting, dying.
They will never accept you.
They already have,
No,
he said, stepping closer.
they love your power, but they fear your truth. If they knew what you buried, they'd cast you out.
Silas reappeared at my side, shifted back, blood streaked across his jaw. He looked Kyle dead in the eye.
You don't get to manipulate her.
Kyle smiled faintly.
I'm not here to take her. I'm here to offer her what she was always meant to be.
And what's that? I asked. He held out his hand.
The last Moonblood.
Everything around us froze. The word Moonblood rippled through me like a drop falling into still water.
What is that?
Silas asked. Glancing between us, Kyle didn't look at him, only me.
You were born before the elders rewrote the laws, before Lunas were made into symbols. You were one of the first, a child of the lunar vein, a Moonblood. That's why you carry the mark. That's why no Alpha can truly command you. You were meant to lead us all.
I stared at him. And what? Become some ancient queen of the shadows?
No,
He said.
to restore what they erased, to bring balance back to our kind.
Silas stepped forward.
You mean control it?
Kyle looked him up and down.
Is it control if it was hers all along?
I turned to Silas. I need to know the truth. All of it. Before I can end this. Silas didn't try to stop me. His voice was calm but heavy.
I trust you. But be careful what you remember.
I took Kyle's hand. And the moment our skin touched, the world fell away. I was back. Not in body, but in memory. I stood in a palace carved from moonstone, my hair longer, my clothes silken. Kyle beside me, not a beast, a king. He held my waist as I stood before a sea of wolves, and I saw myself raise a hand, not to curse the elders, but to protect the ones they'd hunted. Rogues, Omegas, the forgotten. They betrayed us days later, not Kyle, the elders. They tore me from that throne, locked him beneath the earth, and made my name a curse. My eyes flew open. We were back in the clearing. The fight was slowing. The rogues were retreating. Oren stood bloodied but breathing, watching us from a distance. Kyle looked at me.
Now you remember.
I stepped back. That doesn't mean I'll follow you.
Then why do your eyes shine like the moon again?
I didn't answer, because deep inside me, something ancient had stirred, and it wanted out. Kyle's hand still hovered near mine, like he expected me to fall back into the past and wear it like a second skin. But I wasn't the girl in the Moonstone Palace anymore. I wasn't someone's Luna or someone's weapon. I was Rhea, and I was done being pulled in every direction like some forgotten prophecy. I pulled my hand away. I remember everything, I said. My voice didn't shake. But I'm not your queen. Kyle's jaw clenched, just enough to notice.
You were meant for more than this.
He said.
You always were.
And maybe I still am, I answered. But I'll decide what that looks like. Not you. Not the elders. Not anyone who ever tried to bury me. His gaze flickered. maybe with pride, maybe regret. But he didn't argue. Behind us, Silas stepped forward, blood on his shirt, bruises blooming across his ribs, but his eyes were steady. He looked like home,
I told you I'd wait.
he said. And I told you I'd come back to you, I replied. Kyle glanced between us, and for the first time, the fire in his expression dimmed.
Then I suppose your choice is made.
It always was, I whispered. He turned to leave, slow steps, shoulders proud but heavy. The memory of what we were lingered like a half-finished song, but it had played its final note. I walked back to Silas, my fingers brushing his. He didn't pull me into some grand embrace. He just held my hand like he'd always meant to. Quiet, strong, and real. And then Oren came. He was limping, one eye bruised, his arm wrapped in torn cloth, but he still moved like a warrior.
They're regrouping,
He said.
Frida's preparing her last stand.
Of course she was. She'll burn everything if she can't control it, Oren added.
She knows she's running out of time.
I looked toward the hills, where smoke still curled into the sky. She wants to rewrite history, I said. I won't let her. Silas leaned close.
Then let's finish this.
We marched as the sun began to rise. The sky turned to fire behind us, and every wolf in our pack followed in step. No orders, no chains, just belief. We reached the edge of the valley where Frida's forces waited, less now, but dangerous still. And at the center of it all stood Frida herself, dressed in black, her hair tied back like she was ready for a coronation instead of a bloodbath. She saw me, and she laughed.
Did you find your old crown?
I called out.
Or did Kale hand it back to you like a good dog?
I didn't come for a crown, I said. I came for you. She raised a brow.
So brave now. Where was that girl when I broke your bond and took your place?
I took a slow step forward. She was buried under everything you tried to destroy, but she's standing in front of you now. Her smile dropped. I'm not here to fight you, Frida. I'm here to end you, I added. She snarled.
You think I'm afraid of you just because you remembered some dusty past?
No, I said softly. You're afraid because I stopped being afraid of you. She didn't wait for a signal. She lunged. The wolves around her charged like storm water breaking a dam. But we didn't fall back. We met them in the middle. It wasn't just a fight. It was the fight. Claws slashed, teeth snapped. The ground became a canvas of fury and blood. I shifted mid-run, my wolf emerging with a force I hadn't felt in years. She was faster now, stronger, like the moonblood inside me wasn't hiding anymore. Silas fought beside me, his wolf like a silver shadow tearing through anyone who came close. Frida came straight for me, shifting midair. We collided hard, bones cracked. We tumbled across the earth, snapping at each other, trying to break the other open.
You could have ruled beside me,
she screamed as she slashed across my ribs. I'd rather die standing than live beside you, I growled, sinking my teeth into her shoulder. She cried out but didn't fall. She was tough, ruthless, but she had no soul left, just power. And power alone doesn't win wars. I shifted back, tackled her in human form. We rolled across the battlefield, dust and sweat in our eyes. She reached for a blade from her belt. I grabbed her wrist, twisted. The blade dropped. She slammed her fist into my cheek. I elbowed her throat. We were wild, raw. And then I saw it. Her footing slipped. I pinned her down, pressed my hand over her chest. And for one breathless second, she looked afraid. This isn't about you, I whispered. It never was. Then I let the power rise. Not the wolf, not the Luna, the moonblood. A surge lit beneath my skin. It wasn't violent, it was pure, like light breaking through centuries of dust. Frida went still, her eyes widened. And then, her body fell limp. She wasn't dead, just stripped of the madness. Her wolf, gone. She lay there, eyes dull, her power broken. The rest of the rogues stopped. The fight ended with her fall. Silas found me in the quiet after.
You did it.
He said. I looked around at the battered field, at wolves helping each other up, at Auron tending to the wounded, at Frida lying motionless under guard. No, I said, my voice low. We did it. He reached for my hand. I let him take it.
Will you stay with me?
He asked. I leaned into him, my forehead resting on his shoulder. I was never going anywhere else. Weeks passed. The valley began to heal. The forest grew green again. The pack rebuilt from its roots, not its ruins. Frida was taken to the old mountains, to live in exile where no wolf could follow her. Kyle vanished, maybe to another part of the world, or maybe to time itself. But I stayed. I didn't wear a crown. I didn't need one. Silas stood beside me every morning, every night, without fail.
I don't need a Luna.
He once said.
I just need you.
And I gave him everything. Because love wasn't about bonds or marks. It was about choice. And every day, I chose him.